This is the Louie T Network.
Who else could it be? Me, me, Louie T. Welcome to my pre-draft, my 2017 NFL post-draft pre-wrap-up, draft wrap-up, that is, breakdown. Essentially, this is just an overview. It's my fancy, schmancy way of saying draft overview. Want to look at every single team's NFL draft from this past weekend's affairs. Take a look at the players selected. We're not going to get too in-depth. Just want to give you a quick synopsis of what I think about what each and every single team did in the 2017 NFL draft, how I think some of the players that they selected are going to fit in, and how I think they fared. Of course, I'm going to get really in-depth, very detailed. The smallest and most minute details will be done in the draft wrap-up series, which is why this is called the pre-wrap-up, because this is the pre-wrap-up, the precursor to the draft wrap-up series. So just want to quickly take a look. If you're watching this, at the top is the scroll, and what that is notable draft picks that were made in rounds 4 through 7. I'm going to tell you this right now. Day 3 of the draft is a tough watch, okay? You have to be the diehardest of diehard fans to sit through the garbage that they put you through in day number 3 of the draft. You've got people reading from remote locations. The Redskins had Michael Ealy read, and he called Samaje Perine Samaj Perine. It's just pathetic what they do to us in day 3. I cut it off. I turned it off. I couldn't bear to watch any more of this trash. Last year I sat through it. I was a soldier. This year I said, I'm not wasting my time because I can't get this time back. The most valuable resource we have as human beings is time, okay? Because you can get more money, all right? You can get more money. You can't get more time. Once it's gone forever, never to return again. It's a non-renewable resource, as I like to call it. So you got to spend your time wisely. Watching day 3 of the draft is not spending your time wisely, okay? Especially after devoting 5 hours to the draft in day 2. There was no way they were going to get me to sign up for that trash that they give us. 7 hours of straight garbage in day number 3. It's bad. It's really, really bad. But in any event, some teams did some really good things. Quarterbacks were selected. A lot of you were telling me, and it's crazy. That's why I love talking to you, the viewers out there, because you guys know your team better than I. You should at least know your team better than me, because I'm a guy that is watching your team and all the teams around the league from afar. I do enough homework to be dangerous, but I shouldn't be able to tell you exactly what's going on with your squad. That's why I rely on you guys. In this entire draft process, I had numerous Steelers fans. My man Captain Spartan, kept telling me over and over and over again, we're getting Josh Dobbs. We're getting Josh Dobbs. We're getting Josh Dobbs. I had several Steelers fans say, look, man, we're getting Josh Dobbs. And I kept saying, no, you're not getting Josh Dobbs. He doesn't fit what you do in Pittsburgh. And what did the Steelers do? They drafted Josh Dobbs. And that's why you got to love the viewers out there, because you guys are intimate in terms of what's going on with your team. And that's what I need you guys to be. I need you to be my extra set of eyes and my extra set of ears, because, again, me doing the entire league, you miss things. And you just don't know, okay? I'm not following the beat writer from the from the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, okay? I'm not following these teams that closely, so I can't tell you exactly what's happening. So that's why I need you guys out there to inform me, and you guys were on it. A lot of you guys were on it in terms of what your teams were going to do in this draft, and they went out and did exactly what you said you thought they were going to do. That being said, let's get into these teams. I don't want to keep you here any longer than I need to, so we're going to go through these teams one by one and talk about the selections made by each team. We're going to start. We're going to go in alphabetical order. There's no extra thought into this. There's no big rhyme or reason here. We're going straight alphabetical order. And so we're going to start with the first team up, the Arizona Cardinals, and we're going to look at their picks quickly, and I'll tell you how I feel about the selections made. In the first round, they take Hassan Reddick. Love the pick. You knew how I felt about him going into the draft process. I wanted my Redskins to select him, so you know I was really high on Hassan Reddick. Thought that was a big-time get for the Cardinals, who I think, honestly speaking, wanted a quarterback there, and one in particular in Patrick Mahomes. He was not there. They went with Plan B. Hassan Reddick, loved the selection. Round two, Buda Baker. This was a head scratcher. They traded up from 45 up to 36 to get him. Gave up a number of picks, but it wasn't an indictment on Buda Baker as much as what are you going to do with him? I mean, to me, he's a clone of a guy you already have in Tyrann Mathieu, a smaller guy that is a really good athlete that can run around, make some plays on the football. Doesn't have the hands that the Honey Badger Tyrann Mathieu has, but has that same athleticism, able to come down and be physical in the box, able to blitz. All of the things that you've seen Tyrann Mathieu do for you over the life of his career when healthy, Buda Baker can provide for you. So I don't know if that's an indictment on Mathieu, or you just saying, look, we don't mind having two of the same guys because they're both explosive, dynamic football players. I just didn't know what the fit was going to be. We're going to see what happens there, but he's a good football player nonetheless. Chad Williams, an intriguing prospect out of Grambling State, a receiver that's 6'1", 204 pounds. Don't know anything about him, but from what I saw last night, this is the thing I will tell you. When the Cardinals select a receiver, I trust Steve Keim and company because they've done a magnificent job of drafting guys in the third round, particularly David Johnson and my man. Um, give me 1 second. Throat going crazy on me. A lot of talking over the last few days, as you can imagine. BE told me about what the Cardinals have done and the success they've had in the third round. This could be another one of those guys. You know, John Brown was a third round selection. When they've selected receivers, for the most part, they've done a phenomenal job, and they've really hit on their third round selection. So we'll see if this guy can continue that trend for them. Dorian Johnson, offensive guard out of Pitt, gives them some depth up front. They needed some help up front on the offensive line. We'll see what he brings to the table. This was a guy that was really good at Pitt, but had some type of medical ailment that I think it was with his kidney that was going to really see him fall in the draft. And teams didn't know if they were going to, really want to spend the resource on a guy that could potentially not be able to play football. But he gets selected in the fourth round. We'll see if he's able to overcome whatever medical ailment he has and get on the football field and help the Arizona Cardinals. Fifth round pick, offensive tackle out of Vandy, Will Holden. Don't know much about him. TJ Logan, running back out of North Carolina. This is a small little jitterbug type of running back, 5'9", 196 pounds. I think he's going to be a guy that can do a number of things for you, special teams, among others. But I think what he's going to do is probably fill that Andre Ellington type of role on his football team. Ellington, I don't know how much longer he's going to be around in Arizona. This is a guy that you bring in to compete. If he wows you in camp, maybe there's a spot with TJ Logan's name on it. One thing's for sure, this guy can be dynamic out of the backfield. We'll see what they decide to do with him. And finally, their final pick in the sixth round, Rudy Ford, a safety out of Auburn. Again, don't know much about him either. So we'll see what happens with them. Overall, it's a solid draft. Doesn't knock my socks off. I love the Hassan Reddick pick. I still have questions about the Buda Baker pick, even though I love the player that they got there. Chad Williams, again, another guy that you hope will turn out well for them, but you're not sure. Dorian Johnson, the whole kidney situation, what's going to happen with him there? You got to think that the Cardinals got confirmation that he's going to be able to play football. Hence, they spent the fourth round pick on him. And the rest of their picks, none of them really stand out outside of TJ Logan. He's very intriguing at the running back position, a guy that can catch it out of the backfield, very quick, fast type of guy that can be a mismatch out of the backfield. So I look at their draft, and it doesn't wow me per se, but I think it's a really solid draft for an Arizona Cardinals team that I thought needed to add a quarterback and failed to do so in this draft. So that was probably the most disappointing thing about their draft. You don't want to reach for a guy, but You want who you want, and I think they wanted Patrick Mahomes. They didn't get him, and so I don't think they really had a high grade on any of the other quarterbacks. Hence, they didn't take one. But this is Carson Palmer's last year. In my mind, you needed to take a quarterback. You didn't do that, so a little disappointed in what the Cardinals did from that standpoint. But we move on to the Atlanta Falcons, a team that was in the Super Bowl last year. Didn't have many needs coming into this draft. I thought the offensive line, specifically the guard position, was a need. I thought also a defensive line, specifically defensive end, and really just defensive line in general, because I'd like to see them get a pass rusher going into the draft, and I wanted to also see them beef up the interior of their defensive line. So those were positions of need. Safety was a position that you could argue they could use another guy at, as well as maybe corner. So you go and you look at their picks, and I thought that they came out and made a statement early on in the first 2 days of the draft that they were going to be physical and fast. And the same thing that we've been preaching with their head coach over the last couple of years is that they were going to come out, be physical, be fast, and be one of those teams that you didn't want to play. And you saw them mature over the life of last season, and the defense came around. The offense was good all year. The defense came around towards the end, and they continue that trend here. Dan Quinn is really putting together a defense that he can put his stamp on, put his name on, and be proud of the product that they're putting out on the field. Takaris McKinley out of UCLA, they traded up to get him. I love what this guy brings from just a effort standpoint. This guy's relentless, but I think he's got a lot to learn in terms of pass rushing ability. That being said, he's explosive. He can be dynamic at times. He gets off the football very well. He's got a lot to learn. He's got long arms, doesn't use them. Okay, doesn't know how to hand fight. You don't see a variety of moves out of this guy. But like I said, sets a physical edge in the run game, hustles on every single snap, gives you everything he's got. And as you saw the emotion coming out of him at the draft, he's playing for a greater purpose. He's playing for his grandma. So I think I like the pick. He's a physical football player, and he's going to add to the toughness that the Atlanta Falcons are trying to really put forth onto the football field defensively. Third round pick, Duke Riley, just more speed out of LSU linebacker. They take Deion Jones last year, a speed linebacker out of LSU. They followed that up again with another LSU speed linebacker in Duke Riley. Like I said, him and Kendall Beckwith, for me, were the heart and soul of that LSU defense. And that's another solid, absolutely physical, athletic pick there by the Atlanta Falcons on defense. I like both of them. Fourth round, Sean Harlow, guard out of Oregon State. Don't know much about him, but they needed a guard. We talked about that. They're getting up there age-wise at the guard position. They needed to address that. They did in the fourth round. Fifth round, I think this is an absolute steal, getting DeMonte Casey, the cornerback out of San Diego State, a guy that can run. I was really impressed with him at the Combine and watched a couple tapes on him just because of what he did at the Combine. And I really like this guy as a nickel corner. I think he's a little small to play outside, but he's feisty. He competes. He tackles. I like DeMonte Casey. He has good hands to make plays on the football, and I like that pick by the Atlanta Falcons in the fifth round. Another fifth round pick, Brian Hill, running back out of Wyoming. Don't know much about him. They're just going to throw him in the mix and see if he's able to stick with this Falcons running back core. And finally, their final pick of the draft was another fifth round. So they had 3 fifth-round picks. Tight end Eric Saubert out of Drake. I heard some things about him throughout the process, but I never bothered to look him up and do any extra homework. I heard that this guy has some size and has some athleticism for his size, 6'5", 253 pounds. But again, I didn't do any homework on him, so I don't want to sit here and fabricate anything. But he's one of those guys, small school, has some athleticism, has some size to match the athleticism. So he's a project guy. You give him an opportunity in camp. If he plays well and you like what you see, he either makes the roster or he doesn't. You hope no one signs him. You get him on your practice squad. You continue to work with him. We'll see what happens. But overall, this is a classic Dan Quinn type of draft. And I know he's not your general manager, but he had a lot of input in what they did here because The first two picks for defense that we thought they spent a lot of resources on last year, and probably could have used a guard, maybe Forrest Lamp in the first round. They go defense in their first two picks. Didn't have a second round pick, uh, and then spent a third round pick on another linebacker after spending three picks on linebacker or two picks last year on linebacker. So they continue to be aggressive on the defensive side of football early. They do address a need at guard in the fourth round with their third pick. And then I thought they got a steal in DeMonte Casey. So overall, just looking at it first blush, it's a really strong draft for a team that was in the Super Bowl that I didn't think had a bunch of holes to go going into this draft to begin with. So really like what the Atlanta Falcons was able to do in this draft. As we move on to the next team, the Baltimore Ravens, this was the team that we came into the draft saying, look, they need cornerback help. They need wide receiver help. They need to address a few things. I thought they needed an edge rusher. They need a guy that could get to the quarterback. Those were all things that I looked at with this Ravens football team and said they need to come out of the draft with at least one player at each of those positions that could potentially be impact players for them. Let's take a look at what they were able to do. So first need that they took care of first round was corner. Marlon Humphrey out of Alabama. We know Ozzie Newsome, an Alabama alum himself, loves to draft Alabama football players. You give him an opportunity, he's going to take them off the board, and he did that here. Love the pick. He fits what a Ravens cornerback looks like. Long, physical, can make plays on the football. And so I think that was a great pick for them in the first round. You go to the second round, Tyus Bowser, outside linebacker out of Houston, 6'3", 247 pounds. I talked about the Ravens needing to get pass rushing help. Here's a guy that can help you with that. I think he's still raw, still has a lot to learn. But again, coming to this Ravens football team with a guy like T. Sizzle on the roster, he's got a great mentor right there, someone that he can learn from. I think he can fill out his frame a little bit more. This is a guy that you look at him, he doesn't look like 247 pounds. So I think he could put on another 5 to 7 pounds, really bulk up, be a little bit more physical in the run game. This is a guy that I like a lot, though, and I think he has the ability to even kick inside if they needed him to. And I like the fact that he has some versatility. So I love that pick by the Ravens in the second round. You move on to their third round pick. They get a little bit of beef up front. Chris Wormley, defensive end out of Michigan. This is a guy that I see as being able to play five tech, being able to slide inside and nickel sets, can get to the quarterback a little bit, extremely strong and physical at the point of attack, can get a little bit of pressure on the quarterback. I love this pick just because he's one of those just lunch pail, hard hat type of guys, hard worker. You know what you're getting week in, week out. These are the kind of guys that you have to have on your roster. Unsung heroes. You won't hear his name a ton, but the defense is going to function well because of guys like Chris Wormley. One of my favorite Raven picks in this draft, it came in the third round, their second, third rounder, Tim Williams, edge rusher out of Alabama. This guy, to me, was one of the most explosive pass rushers in this draft. His first two steps and his get off, electric. And that's what wins in this league. If you don't have necessarily the best hand usage or you don't have a multitude of moves, you can win with one pitch. We've seen guys win in this league with one move, but it better be a damn good one. And Tim Williams' speed rush is a damn good move. If he times up the snap and he gets out of his stance, a lot of guys don't have a shot at stopping him from getting around that edge, and he's able to bend the edge as well. So love his ability to get to the quarterback. I talked about them needing to get pass rushing help. They addressed it twice in the first four picks. And Tim Williams, I think, is a great value pick. If they can keep him on the straight and narrow, this is a guy that can definitely come in and help them a lot. Fourth round, Nico Saragusa, offensive guard out of San Diego State. Don't know much about him, but his name is Saragusa. So you get another goose on your football team, this time on the offensive side of the football in the trenches. And that's a team that can actually use some offensive line help. And just to let you know that they doubled down on the guard position and went with the next pick, Jermaine Ellenmore out of Texas A&M. Don't know much about him either, but again, another guard that played in the in the SEC. So he was up against some stiff competition. And then finally, their final pick in the draft, Chuck Clark, defensive back out of Virginia Tech. This is a long guy, 6 feet, 208 pounds. Watched a little bit of Virginia Tech football. Not the fastest guy in the world, but he's a long guy, physical, and so we'll see if he's able to make this roster as a late round pick. Thought that the Ravens needed to attack the receiver position. They didn't do that in this draft. This was not a deep draft at the receiver position, and by the time they were on the board in the first round, the big three were already gone. I thought one would be available by 16. They were all gone in the top 9 picks of the draft, which is just amazing how those receivers came off the board. Uh, no one saw that coming. You get the first one off the board at 7 to the Chargers. You get the second one off the board, first one off the board at 5 to the Titans. The next one off the board at 7 to the Chargers in Mike Williams, and the final receiver of the big three, John Ross, off the board to the Cincinnati Bengals at 9. So just like that, the receiver position was dry in the first round, and they never went back. They never went back to the receiver position, and so thought they needed a receiver. They never attacked that position, so a little disappointed by that. But if you look at what they were able to accomplish on the defensive side of the football, this is a statement draft for me with the Ravens. They know they need to get back to being better defensively, and this is the type of draft that can help them do that. They really attack the defensive side of the football aggressively. Their first 4 picks, all defense, all guys that I think are going to have impacts most likely in year number 1. I think this was a really good draft for the Ravens outside of not getting a wide receiver. Buffalo Bills up next, and this is a team that you lose Stephon Gilmore. You had the controversy at the quarterback position whether Tyrod Taylor was going to remain a Bill or not. He ends up redoing his contract and staying in Buffalo. So that took a need per se off the board, but you felt like you still need to get something at that quarterback position. It's still a little uneasy there. And I thought they attacked a number of positions. Receiver, you lose Robert Woods in the offseason. You need to replenish that. So let's see what the Bills were able to do in this draft. You lose Stephon Gilmore. So I mocked them, Garyon Conley, when they were at 10. They moved all the way back to 27 to allow the Chiefs to come up and take Patrick Mahomes II. And so they go and take Tre'Davious White, the cornerback out of LSU, which is a good pick for them. We'll see how he fares in Buffalo, but it addresses an immediate need for the Buffalo Bills, which I thought they needed to do. So that was a good pick there. Second round, I talked about the receiver hole that you have. They go and get Zay Jones, who I thought after the big three was the next best receiver in this draft. So to get this guy in the second round, they had to trade up now to get him with the Rams. But you got to do what you got to do to make sure you fill the holes that you have on your team and do it with guys that you like. And obviously the Bills liked Zay Jones. They come up and get him, and I think it's an outstanding selection because this guy to me is Anquan Bolden 2.0. You go to their next second round pick. They take offensive guard Deion Dawkins out of Temple. Big, raw guy that came to school as a defensive lineman. So he's still raw. He's still learning. This guy has a tremendous upside. We'll see what happens with Deion Dawkins. This is a guy that I think the Bills might be extremely happy with if they're able to get the most out of his talent. You go to the 5th round, the Bills select Matt Milano, linebacker out of Boston College. I don't know much about him. I heard that he's athletic, had some injuries at BC, so we'll see what happens with him. Don't know much about him, though, so we'll keep going, and we'll talk about a huge pick for the Buffalo Bills in the 5th round. A guy that a lot of viewers out there kept saying, man, if you watch Nathan Peterman, have you watched Nathan Peterman? Have you watched Nathan Peterman? And I would say, I've seen him live, but I haven't actually studied his tape. And the Bills say, you know what? We're going to take Nathan Peterman in the 5th round, quarterback out of Pitt, played in a pro-style offense, a guy that I think a lot of teams felt comfortable with as a backup. We'll see what he's able to do in Buffalo, and if he'll even get a chance in Buffalo to be on the active roster. We'll see. We'll see what Nathan Peterman is in this league. Maybe he'll get a chance to start eventually down the road. Tyrod Taylor is a guy that generally gets injured at least once throughout the course of the season, and you're going to probably have to see someone come in relief. Who will that guy be? We don't know. We'll see. They drafted the big kid out of Ohio State last year. Now they got Nathan Peterman, so you've got a young quarterback room aside from Tyrod Taylor. So we'll see what Nathan Peterman does with this Buffalo Bills organization. And finally, the sixth round pick, Tanner Vallejo, linebacker out of Boise State. Again, don't know much about him. Probably projects as a special teamer most likely, because anytime you take a guy this late at the linebacker position, most of the guys on special teams are linebackers. So if he's going to make this roster, it's probably going to be on special teams. But I don't know a lot about Tanner Vallejo. But overall, looking at this draft for the Buffalo Bills, I thought they addressed just about every need outside of tight end. A lot of people had them taking O.J. Howard in the first round of this draft. O.J. Howard was on the board initially when they were up. They decided to trade out of the pick. He was gone by the time they got a second chance. And they never addressed the tight end. In a deep tight end draft, they never once addressed the tight end position. So outside of that, I thought it was an outstanding draft by the Bills. You get a corner, you get a big-time receiver, you address the offensive line, and you get another quarterback to throw in that mix in Buffalo. I think it was a really, really good draft by the Buffalo Bills. Thought they maximized the amount of picks that they had. You go to the Carolina Panthers and what they did in this draft, and this was a very different draft for me with the Carolina Panthers. I didn't know what to expect. I never thought that they would take Christian McCaffrey in the first round, and they did, and people were mocking that, and I didn't expect it to happen, and I told you I would be surprised if they did that, and they did it, and then they doubled down on that by taking Curtis Samuel in the second round. So I'm looking at their offense and I'm thinking they're really retooling their offense, and I think they're changing philosophies as well because those two first guys that they selected in McCaffrey and Samuel have unique skill sets that you have to find ways and create ways to get them the football within the framework of the offense. But you might have to go outside of the box and go outside of the framework of the offense if you don't cater your offense to some of the talent that you have. So they haven't had players like this in Carolina before. Okay, so this is different. Curtis Samuel is going to be a receiver, but like I said, I don't look at him as a receiver. I look at him as a Tavon Austin, a guy that, yeah, he plays receiver, but you create ways for him to get the football. Jet sweeps, handoffs and tosses out of the backfield. You catch a bubble screen out wide, hitches. Then you run the 9 route. You do different things to try to get him involved, and I expect them to do the same with Curtis Samuel. He's so multifaceted. With Christian McCaffrey, he's just so good at catching the football. He's a mismatch nightmare. They're going to start him out in the backfield. I expect him to have 4 to 5 to 7 catches a game just because of what he does and how dynamic he is out of space as a receiver. So those 2 picks, eye-opening. I think that there's a changing of the guard offensively in Carolina. You move on to the next pick, and remember how heavy they were on defense the last couple of years draft-wise. This was a direct opposite of that early on, especially Taylor Moton, offensive guard out of Western Michigan. The word out on the street was they really wanted the tackle out of, and it's funny, he went 1 pick before. His name escapes me right now, but they actually wanted a different offensive lineman. He was gone, and they settled on Taylor Moton, and it was the very next pick. As a matter of fact, I'm gonna go and look because now I'm curious as to the name of the guy that went right before him that I can't think of right now. And I know the Panthers had to be hot because they were right there. Deion Dawkins is the guy that they really wanted. And the Bills traded up to get that pick, and they took Deion Dawkins. And I think the Panthers really wanted Dawkins. I think that's who they actually coveted, and it just turned out to be not the case. And it's funny, that's the worst when you're 1 pick away from getting the guy that you want, and they get snatched away from you. But they settled on Tyler Moton, guard out of Western Michigan. He's solid. We're going to see, if he can make the transition from Western Michigan to NFL caliber players on a consistent basis. Third round, Deshaun Hall, the other guy, as everyone dubbed him at Texas A&M across from Myles Garrett. He was the other defensive end. This guy can play football. He's physical at the point of attack, not as athletic as you would like him to be, but he's no slouch on the athletic side of things. Can get up the field, can get to the quarterback. I think where he's going to make his money is stopping the run and occasionally getting to the quarterback. This is their Coney Ely replacement. And I think his best football is ahead of him, believe it or not. I think Deshaun Hall is going to get a lot better. And I think he's a guy that can do some things for them. And I love the fact that they got some veterans there that can teach this young kid how to get it done at the defensive end position, because I think he's still got a lot to learn. So he's a stiff guy. All right, doesn't change direction all that well. Not going to bend the edge at a 45-degree angle. But I think he's a prototypical 4-3 defensive end, and I think he's going to fit in with what the Carolina Panthers ultimately want to do. Fifth round pick, Corn Elder. This is a guy that a lot of people feel like should be a lot better than what he was at the U. Has all the talent in the world. Just want to see it all come together and him be more consistent. He's a guy that I think is going to probably play in the slot at the next level. And I like his toughness. I think he's physical. He'll come up and hit you in your mouth. Reminds me a lot of the corner that they had once upon a time in Captain Munnerlyn. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, they brought him back this offseason, did the Carolina Panthers. So, again, another one of these situations that if this guy makes the roster, he'll have someone to learn from that is a similar size, similar mentality in Captain Munnerlyn. So I like that pick of Corn Elder. A sixth-round pick, fullback out of West Georgia, Alex Arma. I don't know who this guy is. Obviously, you get rid of your Pro Bowl fullback in the offseason and you replace him with Alex Arma. So we'll see what that materializes into. Finally, their final pick in the draft in the seventh round, they drafted a kicker, Harrison Butker, out of Georgia Tech. Graham Cano had a rough year last year, and that's an understatement. Remember, it started off with the miss in that first game of the season versus the Denver Broncos in a rematch of the Super Bowl. That could have been a game winner, and he struggled for the most part all season long, especially early. I thought he got better as the season went along, but by the time he got his act together, the damage had been done, and the Panthers were in a hole that they could never dig themselves out of. So they're bringing in a guy for competition. And if Graham Gano wants to remain the kicker in Carolina, he needs to tighten up, and he needs to get off to a great start in camp and beat out a young kicker that's hungry, that's looking for a job in the league. So we'll see what happens there. But overall, I thought it was an outstanding draft by the Carolina Panthers. I thought they addressed every need. A lot of people thought they needed a tight end. I didn't. I think they took a guy named Ben Sanderlin last year. I don't know if he made the roster or not, but you still got Olsen playing at a very high level, one of the best tight ends in the league still at his age. You still got Ed Dixon. You drafted Sanderlin last year. I didn't think they needed a tight end necessarily, even though this was a deep tight end crop. I like the fact that they went out, addressed some of the problems on the offensive side of football. There just wasn't enough athleticism on offense last year. And I know you had Ted Ginn and you lose him in the offseason. Philly Brown, no one's afraid of Philly Brown. You needed more pop, especially from the running back position. Now you got two guys that can line up at running back and hit a home run every single time they touch the football. Both of those guys can catch the football equally as well as they can run it. And so now you give your offense that much more diversity. You add some offensive linemen, or at least one in particular. You add a defensive lineman, a position I thought you struggled at with injuries and just guys getting older. There were a ton of injuries over the last couple of years at defensive end. And so Deshaun Hall comes in, gives you some depth. So I like this. I like this draft a lot. I thought, and I said this yesterday if you were watching, I thought the NFC South at the conclusion of day 2 as a collective division had the best draft. And it was the Carolina Panthers, it was the Falcons, it was the Saints, the Buccaneers. All those teams to me had really productive drafts, and you see why when I bring up this Carolina Panthers draft. This was, to me, one of Dave Gettleman's best drafts. And I'm hypercritical of Dave Gettleman every single year. I don't like his drafts. The Panthers usually only draft 5 or 6 guys. I think they drafted 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 5, 6, 7. That's a lot for Dave Gettleman. And they actually have diversity in this draft. They didn't draft 8 tight ends or 8 defensive backs or 8 linebackers this year. They kind of mixed it up, and I like to see that. So I actually think this is one of Dave Gettleman's best drafts. We'll see how it turns out, though, on the field. Let's move on to the Chicago Bears, who surprised us all with what they did in the draft early on by acquiring Mitchell Trubisky, trading up to number 2 from 3, giving up King's Ransom. Not necessarily King's Ransom. I don't want to overdo it and be extra, but to give up what they gave up, to move up one slot, to get Mitchell Trubisky when you signed Mike Glennon in the offseason, a bit of a head scratcher for most, but obviously they know what they're doing, and so we'll see how that works out for them. So we already know about the aforementioned trade up to 2 to get Mitchell Trubisky. They take tight end Adam Shaheen out of Ashland, a guy that was moving up draft boards very rapidly to the point where he ended up being a second-round pick. This guy came out of nowhere from East-West game to combine to all of a sudden this guy was on every NFL team's radar, and he ends up a second-round pick. Big guy, very athletic, can catch the football, has a huge frame at 6'6", 278. So you expect him to be able to block as well. Very good athlete for his size, catches the ball extremely well, very soft hands. I think he's going to come in and be a big target for whomever is at the quarterback position, along with Deion Sims, a guy that they acquired at the tight end position in free agency. So they're looking to really diversify this offense. Last year, there wasn't much there outside of the run game and rookie Jordan Howard. Now you add in some tight ends, you sprinkle in a few receivers, and all of a sudden now this is a totally different football team. You go to their next pick in the 4th round, safety Eddie Jackson, who's coming off of an injury out of Alabama. This is a guy that was dynamic in Alabama, especially in the returns game. He gives you some special teams ability right away. Again, he's coming off of an injury. I think he tore his ACL in the midpoint of this Alabama season. So this is a guy that I think could do some damage. And we thought that the Bears were going to go safety early. They elect to go safety in the mid rounds, and they get a guy that could be a steal for them because had he stayed healthy, Eddie Jackson probably would have been somewhere in that 2nd to 3rd round range. They get him in the 4th round, and I think it's tremendous value if this guy is the same player that he was pre-injury. You go to the 4th round again, so their 2nd, 4th round pick. Tariq Cohen, running back out of North Carolina A&T. This is a guy that I likened him, and he was at the combine, and I likened him to the running back that the Texans took last year out of San Jose State that had just electrifying speed, caught the football well, was Mr. Do-It-All at his school, and similar stature, 5'6", 179, not a big guy. The back that the Texans took last year, and his name escapes me, was a little bit bigger. He's like 5'8", 5'9", maybe even 5'10". But nonetheless, to me, Cohen opened some eyes at the combine, caught the football well, ran it, and he did everything in North Carolina A&T. Makes guys miss out in space. He's like a human joystick. Want to see how the Bears are going to implement him into this offense because you got Jordan Howard, you got Langford, and I think you got some stuff at running back. You throw Tariq Cohen in the mix, and you see if this guy sticks. And finally, their final pick in the draft, 5th round pick, Jordan Morgan. Never trust him then with 2 first names. Guard out of Kutztown, Pennsylvania. Never heard of him. The guy's a bum. No, seriously, I don't know who this guy is. I don't even know what school that is. Obviously, he's a project. Gotta be. Small school guy. You draft him. You like his size. You like his measurables. Maybe he has a little bit of athleticism. You coach him up. Maybe he doesn't make your roster initially, but maybe he's on the practice squad. You continue to work with him. In maybe 2 years, this guy's getting some run. Who knows? We'll see. But that's the Bears draft in a nutshell. A very condensed draft after making the trade for Mitchell Trubisky, so you knew they were going to lose some assets there. But nonetheless, I thought with the picks that they did make, they had some impactful picks. I thought that they, at some point, needed to draft a corner. They didn't do that in this draft. But outside of that, I thought this was a really solid draft. You get Trubisky, again, Nobody really understands that outside of the people in that war room that thought it was a good idea to trade up for Mitchell Trubisky when you just signed. And again, we don't know if Mike Glenn is going to be good or not, but they invested in him. They think he might be good. So you would have loved to have seen him get a shot without having to look over his shoulder. I know Glenn was thinking to himself, this is not what I came here for. I could have went somewhere else, like New York with the Jets, where I would have had an opportunity to start without having to look over my shoulder. Instead, he goes to another situation, just like Tampa, where there's a young, up-and-coming star in the mix, and eventually he's going to sit down and be overtaken by Mitchell Trubisky. It's only a matter of time. It may not happen in year one. It may not happen in year two, but it's happening eventually. And so Bears get Trubisky. Shaheen, I love that pick. I think he's going to offer them not only the ability to catch the football, but to block. And then that's a really rare commodity these days with tight ends coming out of the draft because of the way the college football landscape is set up offensively. These guys are in spread offenses. They're rarely in line blocking. This is a guy that can do everything. And Eddie Jackson, to me, is a value pick in the fourth round that if he's healthy, could be a steal for them in this draft, along with a guy like Tariq Cohen, who I think could add a little versatility in the backfield for this Bears football team. They only had what are you talking about? Six picks did the Bears, but they made the best of those 6 picks. And so I think this is a really solid draft for the Chicago. Oh, only 5 picks, excuse me. Only 5 picks. I like 4 of them. I don't know the last guy, Jordan Morgan. So the Trubisky thing, still out. The jury's still out on that. We'll see how that works out for him. But all in all, the Bears made the most of the 5 picks that they had in this draft. Cincinnati Bengals, a team that historically over the last, let's call it 7 years, just one of the best drafting teams in the league. You say what you want about them getting a bunch of knuckleheads and guys that have off the field issues and character concerns. They play football. And you can say what you want about Marvin Lewis not being able to win playoff games. They draft good football players in Cincinnati. They're always chock full of talent. Last year was the first time I looked at the Cincinnati Bengals and I said, this is a team deficient of talent. And you haven't been able to say that for the last 6 years or so. They've always killed it in the draft. And it just seemed like injuries really caught up with them and really hurt them last year and stopped them from being the team that we've come to know and love with the Cincinnati Bengals. So I thought they were able to get back to that in this draft by drafting they just went out and they said, we're getting good football players. We don't give a damn. We're getting athletes. We're going to be the team that we were a couple of years ago that was undefeated and started out the season like gangbusters before Andy Dalton got hurt and really wrecked our season. We're trying to get back to that. And that's what this draft to me says. It screams, we want athletes. We want playmakers. We want to be a better football team. And this is a hell of a draft. I'm going to be honest with you. They knocked my socks off. This is one of those teams where I look at them and I say, they killed it. John Ross, right off the bat, we knew that they were in the market for a receiver. We didn't know it was going to be that early. But Ross, he's a game changer. We know about his speed. We know that this guy can catch the football. I think he's developing and coming along as a route runner. That's a dangerous pickup, especially across from it's A.J. Green. Love that pick of Ross in the first round. You turn around, and in the second round, you get Joe Mixon, and I think that's such a Cincinnati Bengals pick, a guy that off the field concerns. But if there's anywhere that he can go where he can be reformed, it's in Cincinnati. And so I love the pick because this guy was a top 15 pick in this draft. If you're talking about the running back position, he's one of the top 3 backs in this draft. And to get him in the second round where they did, tremendous value there. Jordan Willis, I thought was a second-round pick all day long out of K-State, the edge rusher out of K-State. They get him in the third round, and I talked about them needing to bolster the defensive line, especially the defensive end edge rusher position. They just don't get enough pressure on the quarterback. They just don't, and it's a far cry from the team that a couple of years ago had guys like Carlos Dunlap with double-digit sacks, and they were getting to the quarterback, and they were all over the place, and you didn't have time to throw against them. Last year, they weren't getting to anyone's quarterback, and so to get Jordan Willis and then to turn around in the fourth round and double down on that and get Carl Lawson, they've improved their ability to get to the quarterback with those 2 players now on their roster. So love that pick. Then they said, no, we're not done offensively because I thought last year it was the A.J. Green show. When it wasn't A.J. Green, they didn't have, especially when Eifert went down, they didn't have much on offense from a skill position standpoint in terms of other targets at receiver. Josh Malone out of Tennessee, really underrated receiver. Height, weight, speed, specimen, can run, can catch it. I think this guy just continues to get better. I think his best football is ahead of him. And Josh Malone, I was impressed with him when I watched him. I watched a ton of Tennessee last year. They were actually a good football team. They played a murderous roast schedule. They were on the SEC on CBS quite often. Saw a lot of Josh Malone, man. Guy's talented. So I think that's another big time pickup. 6'3", 208-pound receiver that can run and catch it. I think they did well for themselves. I've talked about them needing to bolster the defensive line, so they get Ryan Glasgow out of Michigan, a defensive tackle that's going to come in and just be solid as a rock. Not going to get much pressure on the quarterback, but going to be a rock in the running game and a big brick wall there. So I think this is a guy that's going to just come in, give you some depth along that defensive line and help you stop the run on first and second downs and then come off the field. In the 5th round, you get a kicker, Jake Elliott out of Memphis. Look, your kicking situation was abysmal last year. I've never been a fan of Nugent. Mike Nugent was, I felt like, in Cincinnati for like 8 years too long. You finally get rid of him, and I think you went and got Bullock, which is just as bad, if not worse. To me, he's the worst kicker in the league, and I don't know how he continues to be a retread. He's a horrible kicker. You need to address that position. You did that with Memphis kicker Jake Elliott, and I think he's going to make your roster, and I think he's going to be a kicker come opening day. You go to another 5th round pick, J.J. Dillman, a center out of Utah. I don't know much about him, but a more offensive line depth. Jordan Evans, linebacker out of Oklahoma. This is a guy I am a little familiar with. Smaller guy, smaller frame guy, but at 6'2", 233 pounds, he's what this league it looks like at the linebacker position, especially when you're talking weak side, will, run and chase type linebacker, out in space type of guy. He's that kind of linebacker. And in this day and age, with teams throwing the football more than they ever have before, you need guys like him. And oh, by the way, the Cincinnati Bengals linebacker core was getting up there in age. They were getting a little bit slower. They needed to infuse that linebacking core with a little bit of athleticism. Jordan Evans is going to do that for them. And then you go to their 6th round pick, another 6th round pick, running back Brandon Wilson out of Houston. Don't know much about him, so I'll have to do a little bit of homework on him. But he played at Houston with Greg Ward and company. Probably was in that backfield doing some work. So I'll have to turn on the tape and check him out. And then finally in the 7th round, tight end Mason Schreck out of Buffalo. Don't know anything about him either, but you can never have too many tight ends. They had an abundance of injuries at the tight end position last year. So why not throw another guy in the mix and see if he's able to stick? So this is an outstanding, this is back to business for the Cincinnati Bengals. To me, the best draft that I've seen thus far belongs to the Cincinnati Bengals. And again, this is just off first blush, but they got some good football players, almost top to bottom. They filled a bunch of needs. They walked away from this draft smiling ear to ear. And I think they came away feeling like we got better, exponentially better as a football team after this draft. So let's move on to the Cleveland Browns and another one of these teams that I just thought they killed it in the first 2 days of the draft. Let's see what they did in day 3 of the draft. We all know about the pick of Myles Garrett and what he is as a football player. So don't really need to elaborate there. They did the right thing by taking the best player in this draft, and you hope he has an immediate impact. They get Jabril Peppers in the 1st round. They trade up, come back into the 1st round, get Peppers. Or actually, they traded back, allowed the Texans to come up, get their guy at the quarterback position at 12, and Deshaun Watson trade back to 25, pick up some more assets, some assets that they would later give up to come up and get some. And that's what you do when you got all these picks. You playing money ball, you got some assets to play with. Don't sit on your hands. You see a guy you like, go get him. You got enough assets to do so. And they were moving all around the board, making picks. But Jabril Peppers, a guy that is uber talented, you just got to find a space for him. You got to figure out what you're going to do with him. I think he's more of an in-the-box safety than he is a free safety. But nonetheless, guy can help you on special teams as well, get some value there. Love the pick of Peppers. Also, love the pick of David Njoku. They came back into the first round to get Njoku at 31 or at 29, excuse me, from the Packers. So Njoku, Peppers, and Garrett in the first round, to me, home run right there. You turn around in the second round, and they go and get quarterback Deshaun Kaiser. I love that pick because I think if anyone can get the most out of a guy that, to me, has just as much talent as any of these quarterbacks that was taken in this draft this year, it's head coach Hugh Jackson. I think Deshaun Kaiser is in a great spot to have the type of coaching that he needs. Problem is, I wanted him to be able to sit. And with the quarterback situation being what it is in Cleveland, he may not have to sit. I still like Cody Kessler, though. Never thought I would say those words out of my mouth, but I actually like Cody Kessler a lot. And so, and I think the Browns actually like Cody Kessler more than people know. And so I think he's going to get a chance to sit. But there's no veteran there that he's sitting behind that can teach him anything. It's a bunch of young guys in that quarterback room, and that's the thing that scares me about Kaiser going to Cleveland. But still like the pick nonetheless. Larry Ogunjobi, defensive tackle, athletic defensive tackle out of Charlotte, is a guy that I really like a lot too. I think he's got some spring, he's got some pop, guy that can get in the backfield and be a disruptor. So I think that's a really good selection in the third round as they continue to bolster that defensive line. Then you get cornerback Howard Wilson out of Houston, a guy that everyone thought was going to run faster. I was really disappointed with the time that he ran at the combine. And then to make matters worse, he decided not to participate in his team's pro day. So he didn't get to clean up his time or anything, probably because he knew he wasn't going to run any faster. So no need in going out there and doing the same thing over and over again. But at 6'1", 184, the guy's got length, size, and he's got some ball skills. So I think he's better in off coverage and in zone than he is in man-to-man press or anything like that because he's not a fast guy. But bottom line is this is a guy that I think can get in this rotation here in Cincinnati, or excuse me, in Cleveland, and make it on the football field. You know, there's no one really stopping him from getting on the field, honestly speaking. Joe Hayden's always injured. They've got a revolving door at the cornerback position, and I think he's a guy that could easily see getting some time next year on the field. Fifth round pick, Roderick Johnson, tackle out of Florida State. You know, this is a big guy, long, I should say, not necessarily big in terms of girth, but he's a long guy. And so at 6'7", I think that this is a guy that could potentially help them along this offensive line. He provides them with depth, if nothing else, as a fifth round pick. Sixth round pick, this was a big one here. And if this guy can get his act together off the field, this might be the steal of the draft. Caleb Brantley, defensive tackle out of Florida. Remember, we were asking whether he was going to be selected or not. And if he was, where was he going to go? We're talking about a guy that was potentially going to go in the first round, definitely off the board early second for sure if he didn't go in the first. And this guy is a sixth-round pick of the Cleveland Browns. So more talent. Don't know if he's going to work out or not. Don't know what the legal system is going to do to him in terms of his situation outside of the nightclub and the altercation that he got into with the female. But nonetheless, they got themselves a hell of a football player in the sixth round there in Caleb Brantley. Then in the seventh round, they had two picks. Zane Gonzalez, a kicker out of Arizona State. You can always use a kicker. After Phil the Boot, the best kicker in arguably in Browns history, moves on to San Francisco a couple of years ago. It hasn't been great in Cleveland. And I vividly remember you losing a game in Miami that you should have won, that you would have won if you had a good field goal kicker. And so you needed to address that, and you did. And hopefully Zane Gonzalez is some kind of good. I don't know, of course. And then Matt Days out of NC State at the running back position, which is your final pick. Smaller guy, but can do a little bit of something. They had a couple of backs at NC State that were fun to watch, and he was one of them. So we'll see what he's able to do at the next level and if he'll make this Browns roster. So looking at the Browns, I thought it was a phenomenal draft. I really liked the talent. I mean, I think you got a steal in the sixth round of Caleb Brantley. You addressed a number of different needs. And then this is the thing. If you're going to play Moneyball, and I talked about this on Twitter, and my exact words were, if you're going to play Moneyball, you still got to get good players. And the Browns got good players up and down this draft. You know, you may not love Deshaun Kaiser. He's a good football player. and I think he's in a great spot to learn from Hugh Jackson. You may not like what Caleb Brantley did off the field, but he's a good football player on the field. Larry Ogunjobi, a good football player on the field. Howard Wilson, if put in right situations to succeed, good football. I think this is an outstanding draft. On the heels of what Cincinnati did, I'm leaning towards this AFC North as another division that had a great draft as a whole. I talked about the Ravens draft and how I thought they addressed some needs. I thought they needed to attack the receiver position, and they didn't. But that being said, the Ravens had a strong draft. We got to see what the Steelers did in order to complete the entire division. But I thought this was a strong draft by the Cleveland Browns. They got immensely better. They won't be 0-14 before they get a win. That's for sure this year with the talent that they have coming in. There's an influx here of talent that's going to help them change things in Cleveland right away. You go from the Browns to the Dallas Cowboys, America's team. Jerry and those boys. Let's talk about what they did in the 27. I was really impressed with the Cowboys draft. Just off first blush, I watched the first, of course, 2 days, and I watched a lot of the fourth round, and I just was impressed with what they did. They got the what I deemed the best slot receiver in this entire draft in Switzer out of North Carolina, which I didn't know they necessarily needed. I don't know if that's an indictment on Cole Beasley or not, because they're, to me, the exact same player. They do the exact same thing. Only difference is Switzer gives you a little bit of pop on special teams as a return guy, whereas Cole Beasley, that's not really his forte. So let's get into the Cowboys draft. Taco Charlton, I thought, was an outstanding pick for them. I talked about that day one. They needed a pass rusher. I told you, chicken versus the egg discussion at the cornerback and defensive end positions. Do you go after a cornerback in a deep draft, or do you go get the pass rusher? Which one comes first? I'm always pass rusher first, because you can clean up bad secondary play if you can get to the quarterback, but you can't do it vice versa. If you can't get to the quarterback, doesn't matter how good your secondary is, they're still going to have passes completed on them. So they went out and they addressed that with a guy that I thought was going to come off the board sooner. So I thought that was great value there. Chidobe Awuzie, that's a tremendous pick in the second round. I love this guy. Love his competitiveness, toughness, ability to tackle, ball skills, everything. I just think he is exactly what they needed to get. A tough, physical corner that's going to come in and not back down from anybody. And I thought, like I said, the Colorado secondary was the second best secondary to me in this draft behind Ohio State secondary. So this guy here, Chidobe Awuzie, thought that was a tremendous pick for the Dallas Cowboys. So then you go to Jordan Lewis, another guy that is extremely talented, had some issues off the field. I talked about the domestic issues he had with his girlfriend. Nobody really was talking about his situation, though, because he wasn't an early round pick, but he still goes in the third round, and I thought he could have came off the board earlier, and maybe he would have if he didn't have the issues. So the Cowboys living a little dangerous there. We'll see what happens, but Jerry Jones has always been a guy that rolls the dice, and that's a good football player there in Jordan Lewis. So they needed to address the secondary. Two of your first three picks, all secondary members, all three of your first picks of the draft on the defensive side of football, which needed to be upgraded in a major way. Then you go to the fourth round pick. I mentioned this already. Ryan Switzer, wide receiver out of North Carolina. I thought this guy was outstanding at Carolina. To me, the best slot receiver in this draft. Didn't think they actually needed a slot receiver, but you can never have too many receivers. And I don't know if Cole Beasley might be a guy that may attract some interest in free agency next year. I think he's a free agent. Then maybe they're kind of foreshadowing that maybe he won't be around, and so they have his replacement in-house. But whatever the case may be, Switzer is a baller. Cowboys get a baller in the fourth round. Then you get Xavier Woods, safety out of La Tech. Don't know a lot about him. I heard the Cowboys were very interested in him, but I don't know much about him. So we'll keep it moving as we move on to another sixth-round pick. Marquez White, a cornerback out of Florida State. This is a guy that has some skills. Watched him a little bit at Florida State. So I think he's another guy that you draft, you develop in a secondary that is young. Okay, you drafted two corners in the first three picks. You got the young guy, Anthony Brown, that you drafted out of Purdue last year that played a ton of snaps for you last year. So young secondary room. A guy like Marquez White might be able to get in there and jump into the fray and get some snaps as well. So we'll see if he develops at a fast enough rate to get on the field next season if he makes this roster. Obviously, as a 6th-round pick, nothing is guaranteed. 7th-round pick, Joey Ivy, defensive tackle out of Florida. This is a guy who's going to come in and be disruptive. I told you I'm starting to sour on Florida defensive linemen. So I'll have to see. I saw Ivy. I know this guy can get into the backfield and be a little bit of a penetrator, but I'm not going to lie to you. I'm starting to sour on Florida defensive linemen. They've been quite a disappointment over the last 3 or 4 years. Guys getting drafted relatively high and not living up to the hype. So we'll see what Joey Ivy does. But he's a 7th-round pick, so there shouldn't be that much pressure being put on him to perform. 7th-round pick, Noah Brown. This was an intriguing pick, and I actually put him on my list of 7th round notables, because this was the guy that a lot of people thought it was a foregone conclusion. He's going to go back to Ohio State. He's going back to school, right? Wrong. He comes out in the draft and he ends up being a 7th-round pick after a pretty disappointing campaign at Ohio State last year. And the assumption was he's going to go back to school and really show that he can be a big-time playmaker, and he didn't. This is the 2nd year in a row Ohio State has a receiver come out earlier than they probably should have, and it cost them a ton of draft capital as he drops down a ton of spots and ends up a 7th-round pick. Guy's got talent, though. We'll see what he develops into and if he even makes this Cowboys roster. And then finally, their final 7th-round pick. Cowboys seem to have 3 7th-rounders every year. Their defensive tackle, Jordan Carroll, out of Colorado, don't know. And so we'll see if this guy's able to crack their roster. But overall, love what the Cowboys did, especially early in the draft with their first 4 picks of Charlton, Awuzie, Lewis, and Switzer. Thought they killed it there. Marquez White is a guy that I'm intrigued by in the 6th round. So I think this is a really solid quality draft by the Dallas Cowboys as they continue to try to get better and put more around that offense that is just buzzing right now. They attack the defensive side of the football aggressively in this draft, and we'll see if Rod Marinelli and company can turn that around and be a little bit more dynamic defensively. Good draft by the Cowboys. Denver Broncos up next, and this is a team that went into this draft needing to upgrade the offensive line. That's an understatement. I also thought that they needed a linebacker, an inside linebacker. And I thought they got ran on last year, which it didn't happen before with Malik Jackson inside. And he goes to Jacksonville, and all of a sudden they can't stop the run. So I thought they needed to address both trenches on both sides of the football, offensive and defensive line. And I thought they needed an inside linebacker. So let's see what they did. Garrett Bowles, the first pick, that was a no-brainer. They had to address the offensive line. They do that with the first pick. Love that pick. 2nd round, DeMarcus Walker, DN. You lose DeMarcus Ware to retirement, and so they're just looking to continue to get more depth there, and that's what Walker will provide. Carlos Henderson, wide receiver, in the 3rd round. High production at La Tech, a guy that caught everything and can make people miss out in space. Great after the catch, so we'll see just how many reps he gets, because I expect him to play in year 1. Next 3rd round pick, Brandon Langley, cornerback out of Lamar. I'm assuming that this is a guy that's got some measurables at 6 feet, 201, got some size, probably can run, but he went to Lamar. So you got to expect him to be someone that they're looking to develop. You move on to the 5th round. Jake Butt, tight end out of Michigan, was one of my 5th round notables. As you can see, matter of fact, it's scrolling across the top of the screen as we speak. Perfect timing. A guy that, if not injured in the Michigan Bowl game versus Florida State, is a 2nd round pick for sure. Maybe a fringe 1st rounder. He was that good. He would have been long gone by the 5th round, and they get a steal there. Reminds me of when they drafted Jeff Hireman, even though he wasn't hurt. Remember, Hireman ended up tearing his ACL in camp and didn't play in his rookie season. They're going to draft another guy that's probably not going to be able to help them right away, but could have an impact on this roster down the line. Love that pickup of Jake Butt there. Isaiah McKenzie, a guy that can flat out pick him up, put him down in the 5th round out of Georgia. Guy that gives you some special teams value, but more importantly, can stretch the field with the best of them. The guy can run was a big-time target at Georgia. I think this is a guy last year that I looked at and I said, okay, he's got an opportunity to make a team just strictly off special teams, but he can catch a football too. And that's what surprised me about him last year. We'll see what happens. But obviously the Broncos felt the need to attack the receiver position, another receiver. Maybe McKenzie is more of a special teams help, but nonetheless, another guy that can catch the football. So they felt like they needed to go out and help whomever's at quarterback. Got some young guys at the quarterback position. They felt like they needed to go out and help them, and they went out and got some receivers. And then they take a running back, D'Angelo Henderson, out of Coastal Carolina. Don't know much about him. So they felt like they needed to throw another running back in the mix. I think that they got a guy in Devontae Booker that's going to be the lead horse this year. But we'll see what happens in that backfield. They also re-signed C.J. Anderson. So they got is it C.J. Anderson, or am I going back in the Broncos time machine? Is his last name Anderson? I don't think his last name is Anderson. It's C.J. something. I think I might be tripping. Look, man, the draft has got me tripping. 3 days of nonstop coverage? You're talking about over 10 hours worth of coverage, because I'm probably going to be up here another hour and a half breaking down all these teams. So you got to forgive me, man. But in any event, you're going to throw D'Angelo Henderson in the mix and see if he's able to make this roster. And then finally, Chad Kelly, quarterback out of Ole Miss. Didn't think he was going to get drafted, I'm going to be honest with you. He was Mr. Irrelevant. That was the very last pick in the 2017 NFL Draft. And it was a notable one. It's on the 7th round notables list. A guy that has talent. He has just as much talent as any quarterback in this draft. But off the field, this guy is a nightmare. He's dealt with a number of injuries, including 2 injuries this offseason, one in the regular season, another torn ACL. The second consecutive year, he's torn his ACL. And then as he's rehabbing that, he does something to like his shoulder or something. And this guy just can't stay healthy, can't stay out of trouble. So I don't know what's going to become of Chad Kelly, but one thing's for sure, he's going to get a shot to come to camp with the Denver Broncos. So we'll see what happens with him. As we move on, Broncos, it was a solid draft. Doesn't knock my socks off. The Bowles pick was a necessity. I like the Walker pick as depth. I love the Jake Butt pick because I think down the road, if he comes back, the guy that he was pre-injury, he's going to be a stud. But after that, you know, the Carlos Henderson pick has a little intrigue to it, but none of these other picks really changed the game for me. So it's an okay draft for the Broncos. Not madly in love with it, though. From there, we go to the Detroit Lions. And let's see what they were able to accomplish. Thought they got some value in this draft themselves with some of the picks that they were able to make. And so let's get into their draft. We start with Jared Davis, linebacker out of Florida. A lot of people felt like he snuck into the first round. I wasn't sure if he was a first round linebacker or not, but from all indications, he was a great leader on that Florida defense. And he gutted out some injuries throughout this season. And he's got all of the physical traits necessary to be an elite linebacker in this league. He can run sideline to sideline. And he's physical. And they needed that. DeAndre Levy just hasn't been able to stay healthy. They need a guy like Jared Davis to come in and play ball. And so that was a necessity there. And you go to the second round, Tease Tabor, cornerback out of Florida. Love that pick because people beat him up for his speed. I thought he wasn't going to come off the board till the third round. But I'm one of these guys that I tell you every year, don't allow the stopwatch to cloud your judgment, because what you have to remember with these players is that most of the great corners in the league right now, they didn't come out of the draft running sub 4 or 5 40s, okay? Outside of Patrick Peterson, Richard Sherman is not a 4-4 guy. Josh Norman is not a 4-4 guy, okay? The better corners in this league aren't 4-4 guys. They're long, active, and this is the most important part, instinctual corners that can locate the football and make a play. And Tease Tabor is exactly that at 6 feet, 200 pounds. This is a guy that can locate ball, make a play. He's physical, he'll tackle, he's aware. This is a great pick in the second round, to be honest with you. So thought that was great value. Kenny Golladay, receiver out of Northern Illinois. Don't know much about him, but I saw him at the combine. I thought he was impressive at the combine. So another guy that has some size at 6'4", 218, that can catch the football. It's always nice to add a guy with size to your receiving core. So I felt like last year they lacked size at receiver. They have a bunch of mini-me's out there. And I know Marvin Jones isn't a mini-me at 6'2", but he doesn't play big necessarily. He'll go up and get one every now and again, but I don't think he plays to his size as often as you would like him to. Kenny Golladay is going to get a chance to come in and compete. And as a third-round pick, you fully expect him to make this roster. Now it's all about how much of an impact can he have. Fourth round, Jalen Reeves-Maben, linebacker out of Tennessee. This guy can run. This guy can play ball. He's small, but like I said, this day and age in the NFL, these nickel linebackers, and that's essentially what he is at 6 feet, 230 pounds. He's a nickel linebacker. He can run. He can chase. To me, he's one of these weak side linebackers in the league that you don't necessarily want him getting contacted by an offensive lineman. Don't want him at the point of attack against a tight end that can block. But if this guy shoots a gap, he's in the backfield and he's making a play. So but he also gives you great special teams value as well. So like Jalen Reeves-Maben, I thought he was outstanding at the combine, and so showed great movement skills. They just added another guy that can move at the linebacker position, which was a need for them going into the draft. Michael Roberts, tight end out of Toledo, heard his name a few times throughout the process. Don't know much about him. Jamal Agnew, cornerback out of San Diego. Don't know much about him. Jeremiah Ledbetter out of Arkansas. He's one of these guys that's a tweener. You don't really know for sure if he's going to fit in as a D end or a D tackle. What are the Lions going to ask him to do? Are they going to ask him to put on an additional 7 to 10 pounds and go inside the D tackle? Are they going to say, man, you're fine at 280, or you need to cut 10, 7 to 10 pounds and drop down to 263, 270 and play defensive end for us? Either way, he's a hybrid guy. Got to figure out what you want him to do and what kind of football player you want him to be. Sixth round, Brad Kite, another notable pick, and that's going across the screen right now, so that was on time. Quarterback out of Miami, gives you some depth at a quarterback at a position of need for me. Matthew Stafford's about to get a new contract, a monster deal here shortly. However, there's nothing behind him. And so you needed to draft a quarterback so that if Stafford ever went down for a 2 or 3 week stretch, you'd have. And I told you, I think Brad Kaya, I looked at his skill set. I think he's going to be a career backup and a damn good one. All right, a guy that you should feel very comfortable coming in for a 4 week stretch when your quarterback's out with a dislocated finger. And he's going to come in and he's going to play ball for you for 4 weeks. And he's going to hold it down, and you're going to go 3-1 in that stretch, and your quarterback's going to come back in, and you're not going to miss a beat. That's what Bradley Kaya is to me, and I love this pick for the Lions. They desperately needed someone behind Matthew Stafford. Now they have that in Brad Kaya. And then finally, 7th round, Pat O'Connor, the defensive end out of Eastern Michigan. Don't know who he is. So look at this draft, and I thought they did some really good things on the defensive side of football. 3 out of their first 4 picks, all defenders, all guys that can run, with the exception of Tease Tabor, but I think he's an instinctual, dynamic corner. So he makes up for his lack of speed with just instincts, ball skills, and the ability to just play the cornerback position in general. So love what they did there. And then I also love the pickup of Brad Kaya in the 6th round. I think that's tremendous value there. So that was a solid draft for the Detroit Lions when it's all said and done. Go to the Green Bay Packers and what they were able to do, and they were awfully busy after wheeling and dealing in the 1st round and not making a selection. They were extremely busy in days 2 and 3, and so they made quite a few picks. We'll run through these quickly. They get Kevin King at the top of the 2nd round, big long corner. I thought that the cornerback position personally was just young, and those guys just didn't know better. But obviously, they don't like what they see out of their corners because they attacked the secondary big time in this draft. They started out with a couple of guys. Well, actually, I thought they had actually drafted another one, but they go out and get Kevin King, and then they draft Josh Jones, a safety out of NC State. He's a height, weight, speed guy. Um, I thought he did some really good things um, at the combine, which really opened my eyes to who he was. You throw him in the mix in a secondary that is extremely young. You go to the third round, Montravius Adams, a guy that I told you inconsistent, but he's physical, can play the run, can get in the backfield, can be disruptive. When this guy is in the game and he's got energy, when he's not tired, he could be a problem. So I like that pickup. I think he could be a disruptive defensive lineman for them. And you move on to the fourth round. Vince Beagle, linebacker out of Wisconsin. You know, everybody talked T.J. Watt, T.J. Watt, T.J. Watt, but this guy was also playing ball for them at Wisconsin. So again, another one of these guys. If he stays healthy, he can be a really solid edge rusher at the next level. And he can run. He can run a little bit. So we'll see what that materializes into. Another fourth round pick, running back Jamal Adams. A lot of people kept talking to me about Jamal Adams, or excuse me, Jamal Williams out of BYU. And my thing was with him was he wasn't athletic enough to really be on my radar. Uh, but he's tough. He runs. He's physical. So I think he has a little bit of that running back feel. You know, the vision, the patience to set up blocks. I think he's got the savvy that is necessary to succeed at the next level, but I don't see him as necessarily a game changer, which I thought the Packers could have used. Which is why I wanted them to take a Alvin Kamara in the second round or a Dalvin Cook when they had an opportunity, and they're going to continue to put the load on the shoulders of Aaron Rodgers, I guess. Fifth round, the Angelo Yancey, wide receiver out of Purdue. Don't know much about him, but he's got some size on him, 6'2", 201 pounds. Aaron Jones, running back out of Texas, El Paso. Don't know much about him, but that's the second back that they took in this draft. After being one of the teams in the league with the fewest amount of carries last season, they definitely addressed the running back position. They took 3 in this draft. We'll talk about the final one later. And then in the sixth round again, Kofi Amicha, center out of South Florida. Don't know much about him either. So we'll keep it moving. Seventh round, Devontae Mays out of Utah State, another running back here. 5'11", 230 pounds. So this is a bigger back here. So they had definitely addressed the running back position. I don't think any of those guys are true difference makers, though, but we'll see what happens. And in the seventh round, the final pick, this is a guy that is intriguing. I actually put him on my list of notable picks. Malachi Dupree, receiver out of LSU. This guy is a height, weight, speed guy for me. 6'2", 196. I think he's got big play written all over him. I think he can do some things. They played at LSU where the quarterback position left a lot to be desired. I think he can make some plays, and if he can make this team on specials and just get an opportunity, just get your foot in the door. Green Bay seems to always have injuries at the wide receiver position. That's why it seems like they have 8 receivers every year because guys go down. If he could just make the team on special teams, he'll give himself a shot. And we've seen it before, whether it's Jared Abbrederis or Jeff Janis, you know, or one of these guys that steps up because of injuries, he can get an opportunity, and Aaron Rodgers will find you. If you gain his trust, he will throw you the football. I like Malachi Dupree a lot in the 7th round. So Packers were extremely busy. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10-player draft. I thought it was a solid draft. Again, they didn't knock my socks off. Love the Kevin King and the Josh Jones picks. Also love the Montravius Adams pick. Vince Beagle is a guy that I think just needs to stay healthy. If he can do that, I think he could be an impact player for them. Don't really love the Jamal Williams, Aaron Jones, or Devontae Mays picks. I thought you could have gotten a better value at the running back position earlier in the draft. And I don't know any of these other guys, Yancey or Kofi Amicha or those guys at the center and wide receiver position. I do like the Malachi Dupree pick. I think he's a guy that could make the team on specials and then have a shot at getting on the field as a wide receiver. So it was a solid draft for the Packers, but it didn't floor them. As we move on to the Houston Texans and their draft. All right. This was a team that we went into the draft saying, look, you need a quarterback. I don't really give a damn what you do after that. Get yourself a quarterback. And they were able to do that, traded up with the Browns to get Deshaun Watson. That was a no-brainer. Had to do it. I love the fact that they get a guy that, because I think he's going to play in year one. And it wouldn't shock me if he started week one. And I told you, of all the quarterbacks in this draft, he was the one that I thought could come in, start right away, and be impactful. And this is the perfect team to do it on. So, love that pickup. Zach Cunningham, I thought, was another necessity. I thought they needed to address linebacker, inside linebacker to be specific. I told you Brian Cushing's getting up there in age. You needed to infuse that linebacker core with a little bit of youth. I know you got Bernardrick McKinney. Add Zach Cunningham to the mix, and I think that's a really good look for the Texans inside. Deonta Foreman is a pick that I absolutely love. Big bruising back that also offers you some speed. Great change of pace from Lamar Miller, who I thought was worn down at the end of the season last year because they relied on him so heavily. Now you get Deonta Foreman in there, and I love him a lot more than Alfred Blue, so I think you get an upgrade there at the backup running back position. Julian Davenport, offensive tackle out of Bucknell, don't know anything about him. Carlos Watkins, defensive tackle out of Clemson. I think he's a guy that's just going to offer you a little bit of rotational depth. Don't know much about him, so that's a guy that I'll break down on the draft wrap-up series, obviously. Tristan Deku, I should say. Don't know much about him. Safety out of Oregon State. Got some size on him, though, 6'2", 206. So like that about him. Don't know much about him, though. So we'll see what happens. And finally, 7th round, Kyle Fuller, center out of Baylor. Don't know anything about him, but again, why not? Local kid, right up the street. Bring him in, see what he's about, and give him an opportunity to crack the roster. So I thought the Texans needed a corner at some point in this draft. I told you that I felt like you lost A.J. Boye in free agency. I told you that Jonathan Joseph is getting up there in age. I know you took the Johnson kid out of Wake a couple years ago. I know you still got the other corner that starts. Can't think of his name right now. But I just thought you could have used another corner. You know, you can never have enough corners. You can never have too many pass rushers. Just thought you could have used another corner, and you didn't take one. But other than that, you got the most important thing. I thought that this draft was all about addressing the quarterback position. You did that. And then I thought you complemented that by getting an inside linebacker and a backup running back. So the first 3 picks I loved. The rest of the draft, not so much. So it was a meh draft. But the biggest thing that you needed to address, you did, which was quarterback. And so just off the strength of that alone, I thought it was a really solid draft for the Houston Texans. Move on to the Indianapolis Colts, another team in that division. I was actually thoroughly impressed with this Indianapolis Colts draft. And you know they got rid of their old GM, a guy that I thought was just a leech to this organization, in Ryan Grigson. They needed to get rid of him. And it's not a coincidence that GM Chris Ballard comes in and right away they have the best draft that they've had since the draft with Andrew Luck and T.Y. Hilton. So, and coincidentally, I think that was the year that Ryan Grigson won GM of the year. But since then, he's been a nightmare, and they needed to go in a different direction. And I thought they killed it in this draft. Their defense has been atrocious since they drafted Andrew Luck. Their defense got better. Yesterday, the day before yesterday, and today, this Colts defense got better. This Colts football team got better. Period. End of discussion. This was a tremendous draft by the Indianapolis Colts. Let's jump into it. First round, you get Malik Hooker. I think early on in the process, no one expected him to drop this far. As we got deeper into the process, teams were concerned about his shoulder, and he fell right into the lap of a needy team in the Indianapolis Colts. That's a great pick. Tremendous value. Excellent pick first round. Turn around in the second round, and you get a corner that I thought was a fringe first rounder in Quincy Wilson, 6'1", 211-pound corner. Love his game. I told you I liked him better than Teez Tabor, and he actually, to me, was the better of the two. And they get a guy that's long, active, and you throw him in the mix, and I expect him to start day one opposite of Vontae Davis. So I look at Quincy Wilson as a guy, much like Malik Hooker. I think these are two day one starters, two impact players, first 2 rounds. Doesn't get much better than that. Then you turn around and steal the guy that I wanted my team to select in Terrell Basham, who I think is going to be a phenomenal pass rusher in this league. 6'4", 270 pounds out of Ohio, got size, can stand up in the run game, but also has some quicks to get off the snap and has some moves. Will show you a spin move, will use his hands. I really think that this is a guy that is going to be a difference maker for the Colts. So right there, first 3 picks, bing, bang, boom. Safety, corner, edge rusher. You go out in free agency, get Jonathan Hankins at defensive line, and all of a sudden you revamped this Colts defense in Indianapolis. Love what they did right there. Then you get Zach Banner at offensive tackle. This guy's a massive, massive man. Now, he doesn't move well at all, but at 6'8", 353 pounds, if he gets his arms on you, you're done. And so we're going to see if they can get him to – I think he's got to lose some weight. I don't think he can stay at 353 because he doesn't move well at all. But tell you what, man, that guy moves people. He moves men against their will. And so Zach Banner, I think that's a quality pick, depth along that offensive line. Marlon Mack, a guy that I was madly in love with his game in this draft, out of South Florida. A guy that to me was a poor man's Dalvin Cook in this draft. Home run hitter. If he hits the seam, good night. Go ahead and line up the extra point team. And so Marlon Mack is another guy that I think is just going to enhance this Colts football team immensely. Thought they needed to address the running back position. They got to address it in the 4th round with a quality back. I just thought it was an outstanding draft from the Colts. As you move on to Grover Stewart, defensive tackle out of Albany State. Don't know who he is, but we'll see if this guy can develop. Nate Hairston, cornerback out of Temple. Don't know much about him, but Temple tough, right? Right. Let's move on to your final pick in the 5th round. Anthony Walker Jr., linebacker out of Northwestern. Don't know much about him either, but you know he's a smart-ass player. He went to Northwestern. So, look, bottom line is Marlon Mack, Zach Banner, Terrell Basham, Quincy Wilson, Malik Hooker, right there, those first 5 picks, done. Enough said. Excellent draft by the Indianapolis Colts. 2 of the first 3 picks, the first 2 picks are day one starters for me. Terrell Basham is going to help you immediately as well. Marlon Mack, by the time the season's over, may be taking over the lead dog in the backfield from Frank Gore. Love this draft. A great start to Chris Ballard's GM career in Indy. Love this draft for the Colts. As we move on to another team in this division, the Jacksonville Jaguars, a team that every year I come into the draft and I say, you got luxury picks, man. And again, for a team that doesn't win more than 4 or 5 games a season, how is it that you have luxury picks? But yet, they still had some needs, but I just felt like if you take one now, you don't take one now, it doesn't matter. They start out with Leonard Fournette. That was a foregone conclusion. Other than Myles Garrett, that was the one that everybody knew about. So you get Fournette, and what he does is he dynamically changes what you do offensively, takes a lot of the pressure off Blake Bortles, which God knows that needs to happen. And so that's a big-time, no-brainer, big-time pick there. Round 2, you get Cam Robinson out of Alabama. I think he's a guard. I'm pretty sure they're going to try him at tackle first, which I don't have a problem with. And maybe he does turn out to be a really good tackle in this league. I just think he's a guy that's going to have to kick inside because he's too inconsistent. But nonetheless, I think he's going to be a hell of a guard once he goes inside. So he's a good football player regardless. Then you go to Dewan Smoot. I wasn't as high on him as others. He's okay. He plays the run well, but I don't think he gets after the quarterback, which is what I think the Jags need, guys that can get after the QB. Don't think he's going to do that well for you. But nonetheless, they get another rotational depth guy along the defensive line. D.D. Westbrook was a guy that I was intrigued by. I put this as one of my notables in the 4th round. I thought he had 2nd round talent, honestly speaking. But I knew about the off the field issues, and they anytime you biting folks, and it's a female at that. You're not just biting anybody. You're biting a female. I don't know, man. That's a dude I might want to stay away from. So, yeah, he had his own issues off the field. Bottom line is, guy's talented, man. I thought Mike Mayock made a great point, though. He ate up the Big 12 corners, which who doesn't? Told you I don't respect the Big 12 defensively. But when he played up against teams outside of the Big 12, Ohio State and the Clemsons of the world, struggled. So that's where you start to think, is he as good as you think? Or was it just that Big 12 influence? Either way, he comes in and helps bolster an already loaded offensive weaponry attack for the Jacksonville Jaguars. They got receivers on top of receivers on top of receivers for days in Jacksonville. 5th round, Blair Brown, linebacker out of Ohio. Don't know much about him. Jalen Myrick, cornerback out of Minnesota. Do know a little bit about him. This guy can run. Impressed with him at the combine. I ended up seeing him last year when I watched Eric Murray, who was drafted by the Kansas City Chiefs. I ran into Jalen Myrick, and I said, that guy looks pretty impressive. Does have some deficiencies. He's, like I said, very athletic, but there are some limitations to his game. He's not the biggest guy in the world. And also, I don't think he's a great tackler. But bottom line is, he's a guy with physical gifts. Can't teach speed. He's got it. If you can turn this guy into a football player, I think he lacks awareness. All of those things. If you can turn this guy into a football player, though, might have something. We'll see. And then 7th round, Marquez Williams, fullback out of Miami of Ohio. If you're going to run Leonard Fournette, be nice to put a fullback in front of him. So I don't know if this guy's going to qualify as that or you got somebody else in mind, but you need a lead back. You need a guy in front of Leonard Fournette to open up some holes for him. So that being said, Jags, another one of these Jags drafts where they just add more talent to their football team. Fournette, Robinson, Smoot, Westbrook, all solid picks. Jalen Myrick is a developmental guy that could turn into something for you down the road. So I a little disappointed though. I thought 2 positions of need, tight end. You get rid of Juice in the offseason, and you got stuff at tight end. Marcedes Lewis is 809 years old, and he's still playing, and he's solid. You got the kid out of Monmouth that you took as a receiver and turned him into a tight end, big kid there. So you got some stuff at tight end. I think you can get by, but the one that I thought you needed to take was quarterback. But if you didn't like him, I get it. You just go back in and do it again next year if that's the case. So thought it was a solid draft by the Jags. Not better than the Colts, but on par with the Texans in that division. You go from there to the Kansas City Chiefs, and they made a big blockbuster move, huge splash in the 1st round, getting quarterback Patrick Mahomes II out of Texas Tech, traded all the way up from 27 to 10. And in doing so, you knew they were going to give up some assets. They gave up a 1st round pick next year, but it doesn't matter. If you get the guy that you covet and he's worth it, you'll give up a 1st round pick. And so we're going to see what Patrick Mahomes is. I've been telling Chiefs fans this, and they don't like hearing this at all. I've had Chiefs fans come after me for saying, look, there is limitations and a glass ceiling to how far you can go as a football team with Alex Smith as your quarterback. He's not going to lose you games, but he's not going to win you games either. It's Alex Smith. And I think Andy Reid and Hunt and company, they understand that. They know what's going on. They know that they need to take a quarterback. And Mahomes is a guy that could be a game changer in the near future. And so I thought it was a good pick. So, in any event, we move on to defensive line. Tano passing none, 6'7", 289-pound defensive lineman out of Villanova. This guy is a freak. Much like Obi Melifonwu, you're talking about a big chisel cut guy. When I saw him at the combine, I was like, man, this guy doesn't have an ounce of body fat on him. And another one of these guys that he didn't know what the hell he's doing. Big slab of clay. You mold him up into the shape of the football player that you want him to be. Beauty is, Tamba Hali can probably speak to this guy, get him where you want him to be. Justin Houston, also on this roster, can coach this guy up. I look at this dude, and I think he's got all the potential in the world. All the massive potential. And you put this guy on the defensive line, and if he can learn some tricks to go with that size and length that he has and some athleticism, my goodness, this and the Chiefs I think they do this the best out of any team. They take a defensive lineman when they don't need one, and they throw the Giants in there. Once upon a time, the Giants were the best in the league at this. I think the Chiefs have overtaken them as a team that will take a defensive lineman when it's not an obvious need. They just draft one every year. It seems like they treat defensive line like most teams treat quarterbacks every few years or the Patriots, in the case of the Patriots, they take one, it seems like every other year. They just take a guy, just to take a guy, and they spend an early resource on, like last year, they take the big kid out of Mississippi State, Chris Jones. He turns into a stud, and it allows them to let Dontari Poe walk. And they just do this every year. They get another guy, and you're just like, man, this guy's a beast. This guy's a beast, and you keep saying that year after year, and I think Tano passing on could be another one of those guys down the line. Kareem Hunt, running back out of Toledo. I don't know much about him. I've been hearing a lot of people talk glowingly about this guy. I don't know much about him, but a lot of people seem to like him. J.U. Chesson out of Michigan, big size, height, weight, speed guy. Ran well at the combine, caught it well at the combine. I'm not in love with him because he's a Michigan wide receiver, but that being said, you know who he reminds me of already on this roster? Chris Conley. He looks like a Chris Conley clone. Big guy, can run, can catch, but not going to knock your socks off with any one thing that he does. So I think you just throw him in the mix, and he's another one of these Chiefs receivers that can play football, but not going to be a true difference maker. Eugene Alaguye, boy, that's a hell of a name there. Georgia Southern linebacker. We're going to call him UE. I know nothing about UE, and so we're going to just move on. Leon McQuay III, safety out of USC, 6'2", 185. He's got some size. Don't know much about him, but, you like to see a guy with some size and you see if you can develop him. And so we'll see. The Chiefs do a really good job of just developing football players. So thought that was a quality draft there. It's a typical Kansas City Chiefs draft. You make the big splash at the top with the quarterback position. You get the defensive lineman in Tano passing on. And then Kareem Hunt and J.U. Chesson are really the guys that you're looking to contribute out of this draft. And I think the final two picks are both developmental guys in linebacker UE out of Georgia Southern and Leon McQuay III. So I think it was a solid draft. But the big splash here is you get the quarterback. And with this roster the way it is, if Mahomes can develop over the next year and be ready to play next year and come in and play well, the Chiefs can really get a lift from his ability at the quarterback position. I thought you needed an impact inside linebacker. However, in this draft, you didn't get that. So that was a little disappointing. I also thought that cornerback would be a position in such a deep draft. I thought that would be a position that you would target. You didn't get one. So I think a little bit of that has to be I think that probably is based off of the fact that you just either didn't like the guys that were there at the time of your selection, and then the picks you give up, to come up and get Patrick Mahomes. So all in all, solid draft. Not a great one for me, but solid nonetheless. All right. you move on to the next team, the Los Angeles Chargers. Excuse me. Hold on. Someone's at my door. And I'm back. And we pick up right where we left off. Los Angeles Chargers. I think they surprised a lot of us in the first round by going wide receiver Mike Williams, but it was a good pick. Thought that they could have went in a number of different directions. We thought that they needed safety help early. They ended up, and it was a deep draft at safety, so they ended up getting safety help later. And so I don't have a problem with it. As long as you get what you need down the line, I don't have a problem with it. They get a great football player in Mike Williams in the first round. They needed offensive line help, so they go Forrest Lamp, to me, the best guard in the draft. Outstanding pick. So love that pick up there. They doubled down on the guard position and go Dan Feeney in the third round. So they went heavy on the offensive side of the football early. And then they said, all right, you know what? We passed on the safety position earlier, so let's double down on that position. And they go, Rayshawn Jenkins, a guy that I love out of Miami. He will hit you in your mouth, but he also will pick the football off. And the guy can run, has some size at 6'1", 214. You could play him in the box as a nickel linebacker, can come down and hit you, but also can drop 30 yards deep and make a play on the football. Had like 6 picks last year. So this is a guy that I really like. I thought he was outstanding at the combine. Rayshawn Jenkins is a guy that I like a lot. Then you go Desmond King, a guy that played the cornerback position at Iowa, but then he's not fast enough. And he didn't want to make the switch initially, but he's going to have to be a safety at the next level, and I think he can be a damn good one. So this is a guy that I thought was going to come off the board in the third or the fourth round. You get him in the fifth. So that's tremendous value for me. Offensive tackle Sam Tevy out of Utah. I don't know much about him. And Isaac Rochelle, a guy that I'm very familiar with, defensive tackle out of Notre Dame. This guy's going to give you everything he's got. He's going to empty the tank. Not a great pass rusher, but he can be an interior disruptor. I've seen this guy blow up some games, but then I've seen this guy be invisible as well. So think this guy, when he's on and he's at his best, he's a difference maker. When he's not, you won't hear a peep out of him. So it's the inconsistency that kills you with Isaac Rochelle. But I really like him in the run game as a run stuffer and a guy that can get in the backfield and penetrate at times. So I just thought all in all, it was a slow start. I know a lot of Chargers fans were upset about the back-to-back guard picks in day 2 of the draft, but it was a necessity. You needed that kind of help. I thought it was an outstanding draft, to be honest with you. The one criticism I have is that you didn't get a quarterback. And I said that there were about 5 teams, and it was Arizona, it was the New York Giants, it was the New Orleans Saints, it was the Pittsburgh Steelers, and the San Diego Chargers. That were all teams with aging quarterbacks that I felt like needed to get a quarterback in this draft, even if it's not the one that you covet, even if it's not the one that's going to be the quarterback of the future, you still needed to get a guy on the roster, even if this guy's only going to be your backup quarterback of the future. You still needed to get that guy. Get that ball rolling now, figure out what this guy is, and you didn't do that. And just about every team that I named on that list, with the exception of the Cardinals, did that. I don't know if the Saints did that. We'll see when we get there. I don't know if they took a quarterback or not. I don't think the Saints took a quarterback, but the Giants did and the Steelers did. So I thought the Chargers should have taken a quarterback, but they didn't. And if you don't like a guy, don't take him. And outside of that, you get Mike Williams in the first round. Outstanding pick there. You would address the offensive line woes with 2 guards and 2 of the best guards in this draft at that. Then you get some safeties that I think can be game changers. Love Rayshon Jenkins. Love that pick for the Chargers there. And then you double down and get Desmond King, a guy that I think can be a big-time player at the safety position as well. So I love this draft. And then you get Isaac Rochelle as a guy that can come in and compete for a roster spot in the 7th round. So right now, this Chargers draft, outstanding. I really like what they did here. Would love to have seen them get a quarterback, but if you don't like anybody, don't take them. Really good draft by the Los Angeles Chargers. Let's go to another team in L.A., in the Los Angeles Rams. See what they did in the new regime with new head coach Sean McVay. And they went heavy on offense to really help him out with some weaponry, help Jared Goff out with some weaponry. Still don't think you have a number 1 receiver on your roster, but what's going to mask that deficiency is just having a bunch of targets, just being able to throw an abundance of targets at teams and spread the football around. And your first pick in this draft, in the 2nd round, remember, no first-round pick due to the trade that allowed you to acquire Jared Goff last season. Your first pick in this draft, Gerald Everett, tight end out of South Alabama. Folks, I've done a video on him, Draft Prospects 101 series. If you haven't seen it already, please go and check that out. But bottom line is, that guy can play football. And so, to me, he was the guy that had the best run after the catch at the tight end position. Ex-basketball player, has the size to block. I think he's going to get better as a tight end. I think he can run routes better. I don't think he's a great route runner, but that's something you can learn. You can learn to become a better route runner. You can't teach what this guy has. Has a little bit of quicks, great make you miss, change of direction, can go up and get the football in traffic. Love that selection. He's going to be the Rams version of Jordan Reed. I'm telling you right now, that's how they're going to utilize him. Round 3, Cooper Kupp, wide receiver out of Eastern Washington. I did a Draft Prospects 101 series breakdown on him as well. Love Cooper Kupp. After Zay Jones, I thought he was the next best receiver in this draft, ahead of Juju Smith-Schuster. So that tells you how I felt about Cooper Kupp. And I think that guy's going to be a whale of a football player. So you throw him in the mix. John Johnson, safety out of Boston College, don't know much about him. Also, 4th round, Josh Reynolds, wide receiver out of Texas A&M. I do know some things about him. 6'3", 194, great size, has the ability to run by defenders, make plays on the football. Saw him make countless plays, had double-digit touchdowns in 2016. So he's a guy in the red zone at 6'3" that can make plays, but also can make some plays outside the red zone and get into the end zone after the catch. So he adds some immediate size to a receiving core that I think is lacking size, true size, in Los Angeles with the Rams. So after you lose Kenny Britt, I thought the size factor there was non-existent. You add a guy like Josh Reynolds to the mix, and he gives you some immediate size at the receiver position. Samson Ebukam out of Eastern Washington is a guy that looks like he can move. I saw a few clips of him when they made the selection. I've never heard of him, but Mike Mayock said he was jumping up draft boards because of his athleticism. This is a pass rusher that I saw him. He was moving, okay? He was moving. He looks like he's raw, has some things that he's going to have to work on, but he's one of those guys you draft and you work with him and you say, all right, man, you got a bunch of talent. Let's see if we can't hone this talent and get you to play football the right way. So we'll see what happens with him. Tanzil Smart, defensive tackle out of Tulane. I heard him mentioned a bunch. I don't know much about him. Sam Rogers, fullback out of Virginia Tech. He's a tough, physical guy. Can also catch it out of the backfield. So I think he's another guy that could provide you with a little bit of playmaking ability around Jared Goff, a guy that you're not going to really be paying a bunch of attention to because he's a fullback. But he's no ordinary fullback. Sam Rogers can catch it. Sam Rogers can run it. At times, they even used him as their feature back at Virginia Tech. So I think he's a guy that could actually turn out to be a playmaker for this Rams offense when it's all said and done. And then Ewan Price, defensive end out of Pitt. Don't know much about him. At 5'11", 241, he must have some kind of elite trait because that size is not great at all for a defensive end, outside linebacker type of pass rusher. So I'm assuming that he's got to have some explosion or something. I don't know what this guy is as a football player. So overview of the Rams draft. I thought they did some really good things offensively to get Jared Goff some weapons. I love the Gerald Everett pick. I love the Cooper Kupp pick. Josh Reynolds' pick is one of those ones that you look at and you say, okay, jury's out on that pick, but the guy's got talent for sure. Don't know much about Josh Johnson. Samson Ebukam is a guy that I think is developmental. Same with this Juan Price guy. Sam Rogers is a guy that I think could be one of those quiet late round gems for you in this draft at the fullback position. And Tanzil Smart is a guy that I've heard about but don't know much about. So I look at this draft and I think that they got better offensively. Don't know if they made any moves to impact the defense that greatly in this draft. I thought that you needed to go out and get a corner, and I thought offensive line was a big problem for you last year and that you would address it at some point. But this was not a great offensive line draft, and so I'm not going to kill you for that. But I did think with all the corners available in this draft that you did need to go out and get a corner, and for you not to come away with at least one corner after I think 30-something, maybe even upwards of 40 corners were taken in this draft, and you didn't take one, I do have a problem with that. So it was an okay Rams draft. Love what they did on offense. Think they really underbidded on the defensive side, though, of the football. Miami Dolphins. See what time it is. All right. Should be done here in the next 30, 35 minutes. Miami Dolphins took Charles Harris in the first round. Pass rusher, edge rusher out of Missouri. He's a guy that I'm hot and cold on. There's games where I like this guy's a legit first round edge rusher, and then there's games where I'm like, this guy's nowhere near the first round. I didn't love this pick. I would have preferred you have taken Taco Charlton there. I think Taco Charlton's upside is greater than that of Charles Harris, but we'll see what happens. Nonetheless, you needed a pass rusher. And that was one of the needs that I identified for you going into the draft, which is why I mocked you a pass rusher. So I don't have a problem with the pick. We'll see if Charles Harris is the guy that you think he is, because I don't think he is as dynamic a pass rusher as most do. Raekwon McMillan is a guy that I really liked, and I thought he really helped himself and made himself into a second-round pick at the Combine by running as well, testing as well. I thought he moved well because we know he's physical, he's a thumper, he'll hit you. But we didn't know how fast he was. We thought he was a two-down linebacker. I think he might actually be a three-down linebacker. 6'2", 240, great size at the linebacker position. Love this pick. You lose or you go out and get Lawrence Timmons, but remember, Timmons is up there in age. He's not a spring chicken. And you can never count on Kiko Alonso to stay healthy. So I love the pick of Raekwon McMillan. Cordrea Tankersley out of Clemson. I think he's one of these guys that height, weight, speed, first of all, specimen, 6'1", 200 pounds, 4'4" guy. Played at Clemson against a number of tough wide receivers. He's battle tested. Just my biggest issue, and he can make plays on the football when he can find it. That my problem is he doesn't locate the ball. He panics with the ball in the air, down the field, gets very grabby. I could see him picking up a ton of PI penalties, but I love the measurables. And again, if he can find a way, look, he's one of these guys that if he can find a way to locate ball, and generally corners don't change their stripes at the next level when it comes to ball location and being able to find the football. Either you do or you don't. If he can somehow miraculously locate ball in the NFL, he could turn into a steal in the third round because he's got all the tools necessary to be a top flight NFL corner. Gotta find the football. Fifth round, Isaac Asiata, a guard out of Utah, run blocker. I saw a lot of him because I watched a ton of Joe Williams, who I was absolutely in love with his game. Wanted my Redskins to draft him, so I saw a lot of Asiata, and he's mean, man. He's a road grader in the run game. Has some deficiencies in the pass game, but if you're looking to run the football, run behind big Isaac Asiata, he'll never steer you wrong. So love this as a depth pick, and I think the Dolphins, they were a hit and miss team running the football last year. When Jay Ajayi was at his best, running for over 200 yards, they were dominant, but then he would run for 49 yards. So you're looking for more consistency in the run game. A guy like Isaac Asiata might be able to provide you with that. Devon Godchaux, don't know who he is, defensive tackle out of LSU. Don't know much about him. Although he went to LSU, that's got to count for something, right? So you move on to the sixth round, Vincent Taylor, defensive tackle out of Oklahoma State. Don't know much about him, but back-to-back defensive tackles. So you're looking to provide some depth there along the defensive line, which I thought was also something that you needed to do. And then in the seventh round, Isaiah Ford, wide receiver out of Virginia Tech, who I really like a lot. He's capable of getting a roster spot on this football team. 6'1", almost 200 pounds, 194. He can make plays on the football. He drives me nuts, though. Another one of these hot and cold guys because he's inconsistent. He's one of these guys that can light you up for 7 catches, 122 yards, and 2 touchdowns, one of which where he went up, climbed the ladder, took the football from you. And the next 2 weeks, he's got a total of 3 catches for 27 yards and no touchdowns. And you're like, where the hell is Isaiah Ford? So, you know, it's that kind of thing where he's inconsistent. I don't think he uses his length enough to separate from guys. Sometimes at the top of a route, maybe you just need to give him a little shoulder, something real subtle, and go up and go get the football. I don't think he plays tough at the point of catch sometimes. So he's a guy that I think could help his football team. But he's going to have to be consistent if he wants to earn a roster spot. So looking at this Dolphins draft, I think this is an upside draft, more so than a sure thing. Charles Harris, I think, is an upside guy. I don't think he's a sure thing as a first-round pick, which you want your first-round pick to be a sure thing. Now, don't take my advice for that. Yeah, this guy might be a sure thing. I just don't see it. Raekwon McMillan, another upside guy, I think, has all the potential in the world to be a dominant first and second down linebacker with the ability to potentially be a 3-down linebacker. We'll see. Cordrea Tankersley, got to find the football, man. He's got everything. Size, length, ball skills. Find the damn football. And oh, by the way, he doesn't want to tackle at all. If you thought Kevin King was bad, go check out Cordrea Tankersley. Wants no part of helping in the run game either. Isaac Asiata, road grader in the run game. And Isaiah Ford is another guy that I think has potential. So this is a potential draft for me. It's okay. I'm not blown away by what the Dolphins did in this draft, but it's a solid draft nonetheless. I already told you I think the Dolphins are one of the most talented teams in all of the National Football League anyway. So from that standpoint, I don't think there was a ton of things that they necessarily needed to do to really put them in a position to win. They just need to continue to grow off of what they did last season. And then you add in some of these guys that you drafted and you see what you can do. From there, we go to the Minnesota Vikings, who didn't have a first-round pick due to the Sam Bradford trade a season ago. So you look at what they were able to accomplish, and I thought they had a strong draft. Just looking at the guys that they were able to go out and get, and man, they had a haul. And they've always said, you know, they've always talked about wanting to build through the draft. Their GM, Rick Spielman, has always made it a point of emphasis to tell people, we're not going to do a lot of damage in free agency. That's not the type of football team we want to be. We want to build through the draft. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 draft picks says screams even we want to build through the draft. So let's run through their draft quickly. Dalvin Cook in the second round is a steal, folks. 41st pick overall. No way that man should have lasted that long in the draft. I don't know about his off-the-field situation, and I don't know if teams weren't comfortable with that. That's fine. But the talent screams first round. That's an outstanding football player you're getting in the second round there. Pat Elflein, to me, was the best center in this draft because I think Ethan Posick, you could actually play at guard or even tackle in a pinch. I think Elflein is one of the purest center in this draft, so you get that there in the third round. Jaleel Johnson is a really solid defensive tackle out of Iowa. Has a little bit of athleticism. He's strong and physical at the point of attack. I like him a lot. I think he's a guy that can make some plays and do some things. I think he can do a lot for you. So I like Jaleel Johnson a lot. And then you get Ben Gideon, linebacker out of Michigan. Two-down linebacker. He's not going to be on the field on third downs. However, you're looking for a guy to come in and play the Adi Cole role on your football team. Meet Ben Gideon. Essentially is what I look at him being, a guy that's going to help you on special teams and eventually find his way onto the field on first and second downs. Rodney Adams, wide receiver out of South Florida. Speed guy. I know that much about him. Haven't watched Marlon Mack, but I don't know a ton about this man's game. I'd be lying to you if I said I did, but I know he can run. I saw him run. So I know he can do that. Danny Isadora, guard out of Miami. Depth. You know, a guy that you're going to come in. Look, your offensive line was horrendous last year. So anybody that you get, you throw them in the mix and you see who are the best 5 offensive linemen that you can put on the field. I know you had a ton of injuries, and maybe with guys healthy, your line isn't that bad, but Danny Isadora is going to get a chance to come in and compete. This is a pick I love in the 6th round. Bucky Hodges, tight end out of West Virginia. This guy's not a tight end. He's a receiver. And this is something that you just currently lack. I didn't think any of your big receivers gave you anything last year. Treadwell could hardly get on the field. Charles Johnson, massive, massive bust. After having a big-time year 2 years ago, you thought he was going to really shine, and he did nothing last year. Bucky Hodges gives you some immediate size, you know, at the tight end position, and I think you're just going to flex this guy out, put him in the slot, put him out wide, use him as a mismatch nightmare, hope that the other team is foolish enough to put a linebacker or a safety on him and just throw it up to him. Now, I think he struggles, and I broke him down on the Draft Prospects 101 series. I think he struggles at the point of the catch. Anytime he's in a contested catch situation, he doesn't catch it as cleanly as you would think he should. But remember, this is a guy that was a quarterback his entire life and got to the Virginia Tech campus and made the switch from quarterback to tight end. So you're talking about a raw guy that only played the tight end position for 3 years. This guy can learn so much more about that position and become so much better. And at 257, I don't know if there'll ever be a willingness to block, but you can do some things with Bucky Hodges, folks. So that's a great pick for me. 7th round, Stacey Coley, wide receiver out of Miami. I put him down on my 7th round notables just because this guy's uber talented, but the assumption was he was going to go back for his senior year at Miami. He should have went back. Don't know why he came out, but this is the penalty for coming out early. He's a 7th round pick. But the guy can play football. He's inconsistent, but nonetheless, he's talented. And I think he's going to not only make this roster, but I think he's going to be a contributor in year 1 at some point in his rookie season. Ifeadi Igagambo, I can't say his name. Let's call him Io, the defensive lineman out of Northwestern. I don't know him, so I'm not even going to try to break that down. Elijah Lee, linebacker out of K-State. Don't know him either. And Jack Tocho, cornerback out of NC State. I think this is a guy that you take and you convert him to safety. And I think that's what they're going to end up doing. Because they didn't take a safety in this draft, and I think most people thought they would take a safety at some point. So I'm thinking that Jack Tocho is a developmental guy that you take late in the draft, has some athleticism and some skills, and you move him over to safety. So looking at this Vikings draft, I like what they did with their first 3 picks. I like the depth that Ben Gideon provides. I love the Bucky Hodges pick in the 6th round. I actually love the Stacey Coley pick. I think that's a value pick in the 7th round as well. And I give you another one. That Jack Tocho pick might not be too bad in the 7th round as well. So um, we'll see what the Vikings do. I thought it was a really solid draft. I'm not disappointed. I don't walk away from this draft disappointed. After not having a 1st-round pick to get Dalvin Cook, that right there itself is a huge win. And to get Pat Elflein and Jaleel Johnson where they did, I think they got some value picks and they did well for themselves. Quantity over quality for the Vikings after their first 3 picks in this draft. So thought it was a really solid draft by the Minnesota Vikings. You go on to the New England Patriots, and they just flat out said, we're in win now mode, so we're going to trade away just about all of our assets because we realize that we got Tom Brady for another 3 years or so, and we're pushing all our chips in the middle of the table. So we'll trade away a pick for Coney Ely. We'll trade away a pick for Brandon Cooks. We want known commodities. We don't want young guys that we're going to have to wait to develop. We don't have time for that. We're trying to win 2 more Super Bowls while Tom Brady is still our quarterback. So we're going to get known commodities that can help us now, and we're going to mortgage away a little bit of our future in doing so. And so they traded back and 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 back. And what they ended up coming away with was just 4 players. So Derek Rivers, defensive end out of Youngstown State, don't know anything about him, saw some clips. I saw a little bit of burst. I saw a guy that used his hands well, so he could develop into some type of a pass rusher. Antonio Garcia, offensive tackle out of Troy, is a guy that I think is a really good pickup for them. Gives them some versatility along that offensive line. I think he's a tackle right away. Maybe he ends up at guard, but I think he's got the ability to play tackle at the next level. Dietrich Wise is a defensive lineman out of Arkansas, much like Flowers, who you drafted last year or 2 years ago, one or the other. One of these hybrid guys that can do a little bit of everything. And you know the Patriots love multifaceted football players that can fill more than one void and play more than one position. Dietrich Wise is one of those guys. And then in the 6th round, Connor McDermott, offensive tackle out of UCLA. Not really familiar with him. So 4 players in a very underwhelming draft for the Patriots. But again, the Patriots, they made the commitment this offseason to getting known commodities. When do the Patriots ever go out and spend big money on a cornerback like they did in the Bills cornerback that they snatched away? They don't do that. But they felt the need to do that. Stephon Gilmore gave them big money. They went and traded for Coney Ely. They went and traded for Brandon Cooks. The Patriots were being uber aggressive in the offseason because they knew they weren't going to invest a ton of resources into the draft. They went out and got Mike Gillespie in free agency. They addressed just about everything that they could in free agency so that they could have a 4-player draft. So we'll see if that pays off for them or not. But that was a very underwhelming draft. Probably one of the worst thus far, but it's the Patriots. They don't need the draft right now because they got enough stuff. And oh, by the way, they got Tom Brady, so they'll be just fine. Moving along, New Orleans Saints, who I thought had a magnificent day 1 and 2. Let's see what they did in day number 3. So Marshawn Lattimore, I thought was a gift that fell into their lap that they just couldn't turn down. They turned around and got Ryan Ramczyk at the very end of the 1st round with that trade with the aforementioned New England Patriots. So you get a tackle that's going to come in day 1, start at right tackle. You get a corner that's going to step in day 1 and be your number 1 corner. So you get 2 impact players in the 1st round, which is what you're supposed to do. Then you turn around, get safety Marcus Williams, who I think is going to push to try to start alongside Von Bell at the safety position in New Orleans. I love Marcus Williams' ability to play single high free safety and run around and make plays, but also can hit as well. So Love those 3 picks. Just I fell out of my seat when they got Alvin Kamara, um, basically yesterday. Just a tremendous pick. It's the rich getting richer because already having Adrian Peterson and Mark Ingram, you didn't need Alvin Kamara. But what he's going to do is he's going to come in and fill that Tavares cadet role that's now been vacated, and he's going to come in and just be an animal. And I think he's in the perfect place to have all of his talents on full display because Sean Payton is going to use this man in a just dynamic fashion. They're going to use him like they used Reginald Bush once upon a time, and he's going to be a stud for him right out of the gate. And so, love that pick. Alex Anzalone is a guy that I thought was after the first few linebackers, Hassan Reddick, Reuben Foster, of course, Cunningham, and Davis, Anzalone was the next guy. So you get a top 5 linebacker in the third round as well. I just thought they killed it in the first 2 days. All right, so then oh, by the way, they got Trey Hendrickson in day 2 as well. A guy that was extremely athletic at the combine, blew me away to the point where I actually put on a couple of games just to watch him. I was impressed. So I really think this is a guy that can get after the quarterback and do a number of things, man. And he can set a physical edge in the run game. So they got better on defense. They added a couple of big-time pieces on offense. And in day 3, they just said, hey, we good. We did everything we needed to do in the first 2 days. They add Al-Quadin Muhammad, a guy that is a troublemaker off the field from the U, but has a ton of talent as a pass rusher. If he can just stay out of his own way off the field, this guy can help you on defense as well. Long, active, athletic defensive end that didn't hardly play at Miami because he was always suspended. This guy has some ability. So I told you, I thought that the NFC South killed it in the draft. This is the reason why here. Because of what Carolina did, because of what Atlanta did, because of what New Orleans did. We haven't gotten to Tampa Bay yet, but obviously I liked what they did in the first couple of days. We're going to see what they did in day 3. But the Saints, to me, killed the draft. They murdered it. It's dead. Saints had an outstanding 2017 NFL draft, if you asked me. Right along with the Indianapolis Colts and Cincinnati Bengals, for me, those are the 3 teams right now ahead of the pack in terms of first blush, just looking at drafts from afar. Move on to the next team in the New York Football Giants, the G-Men, and we're going to talk about their draft now. And this was a team that I thought needed to do a number of things going into the draft. I thought they needed to get a tight end, but I said you could wait to do that. They didn't wait. They got a tight end right away, and a damn good one. We're going to talk about that in a second. I thought they needed to get a quarterback. They did that as well. We'll talk about that. Thought they needed to get a running back. They did that as well. So I thought they did a lot of things that they needed to do in this draft. I also thought they needed an inside linebacker, and for the life of me, I just don't know why the Giants refuse to spend resources on inside linebackers that can help them. They get away with it, though. So I think that's why they would prefer to just keep stockpiling guys along the defensive line, which they did again in this draft, versus spending resources on linebackers. That being said, Evan Ingram, first round pick, tight end out of Ole Miss, stud, fastest tight end in the draft, a big time playmaker, run after catch guy, can separate from defenders. And oh, by the way, I think this guy competes as a blocker as well. So love that pick. Knocked it out of the park there. Didn't expect them to pull the trigger on him in round 1, and they did. Dalvin Tomlinson, defensive tackle out of Alabama. Big run stuffing defensive tackle. You lose Jonathan Hankins in free agency. Okay, I'll just go out and get Dalvin Tomlinson. Love the pick there. Good value for him. Davis Webb, quarterback. Cal, love the pick. Okay, Eli Manning, 35, 36 years old, whatever he is. He's getting up there in age. You need a developmental quarterback behind him. Nazib was horrible. If Eli Manning ever went down, the Giants season would be over immediately. Not immediately, immediately, because Ryan Nazib stinks. Now you got Davis Webb. You got a guy that can come in and potentially help you down the line, but at least you got somebody else that you can trust. You got to feel good about that. Wayne Gallman, running back out of Clemson in the 4th round. Tremendous value, okay? This is a guy that we talked about as one of the top backs going into the college football season. He was surpassed by a number of backs. Didn't have the athleticism that we thought he possessed. I think that's what killed him on a lot of people's draft boards. 4'6" guy, but make no mistake about it. He's a talented football player, and the Giants just got better on offense because Wayne Gallman is going to be able to come in. And along with the guy that they took last year that I really like out of UCLA, I think you got a nice 1-2 punch at the running back position now, adding Wayne Gallman to the mix. Avery Moss, defensive end out of Youngstown State. So both Youngstown State's defensive linemen or edge rushers come off the board. Avery Moss is another guy. I have no idea about this guy, but they said he's got high upside. He's 6'3", 265. So the Giants love their pass rushers. Add Avery Moss to the mix. And Adam Besnasri from a tackle from Pitt. I heard his name a ton, just don't know about him. But again, the Giants needed offensive line help, so he's going to get an opportunity. That's for sure. I thought this was a strong draft by the Giants. I really did. Ingram, Tomlinson, Webb, Gallman, all guys that I think at some point are going to have impacts for this Giants football team. Ingram, Tomlinson, and Gallman are going to have year 1 impacts. How great? I don't know. Ingram and Tomlinson, I think, are going to see the field extensively. Gallman may or may not. We'll find out. Webb, probably with Eli Manning being the Iron Man that he is, he won't, but at least you have him on ice. That's what the most important thing was there. So I thought this was a really good draft by the Giants. Along with the Cowboys and the damage that they did early in their draft, the Giants and the Cowboys doing well in the NFC East thus far. Let's move on to the Jets. From one New York team to the next. And this was a head-scratching draft from a number of standpoints. One, I thought they needed an edge rusher. They didn't get one. Two, what are you doing at quarterback? Like, this is the thing. I didn't want them to take a quarterback, but the assumption was they were going to take a quarterback. Maybe they only wanted Mitchell Trubisky, and once they didn't get him, they were like, we're not taking another quarterback in this draft. Whatever the case may be, there was so much talk around the quarterback position, and then they didn't take one. Okay, fine. But you needed a pass rusher, and you needed offensive line help. To not take either one, what are we doing? What are we doing? So, and again, this was not, I'm not going to kill him for the offensive line thing. It's not an offensive line draft that's deep. So, anyway. Jamal Adams, no-brainer, first round. Okay, I don't think they thought he was going to fall into their lap, but he did. You don't pass him. All right. Then they doubled down on the safety position and get Marcus May. So I don't know what that means for Calvin Pryor. I don't know what that means in terms of how they feel about him. But Marcus May, to me, is one of the most slept-on safeties in this entire draft. He's athletic, he's physical, and I'm starting to really have an affinity for Florida secondary members. They've come in the league and they've played well. Just about their entire secondary was drafted in this draft, and I think he's another good one in Marcus May. So I love that pick. Darius Stewart was an underrated receiver in this draft. I thought he had a phenomenal combine, made it look easy when he caught the football. I think he's just a professional wide receiver, just a guy that week in, week out is going to get it done. You're not going to hear his name called when you start rattling off among the best receivers in the league, but he's just going to be as consistent as the day is long. I like him a lot. Chad Henson, a big receiver from Cal that can catch the football well. Really good hands. Just another really solid acquisition by the Jets. There, Jordan Leggett, tight end out of Clemson in the 5th round. I thought this was tremendous value because I actually thought he was going to come off the board in the 3rd or the 4th round. And to get him in the 5th round, mismatch nightmare, a guy that can block in the run game at 260 pounds, but also can split out and be a mismatch nightmare as a pass-catching tight end. So love that selection. Dylan Donahue, defensive lineman out of West Georgia. Maybe he's a pass rusher. I don't know him. But at 6'3", 248, I'm assuming that he's some kind of pass rusher. Elijah McGuire, running back out of Louisiana, Lafayette. He's a good receiving back. I don't know much about him, but I did see a couple of cut-ups of him catching it out of the backfield, so I'll have to do some homework on him. Jeremy Clark, a cornerback out of Michigan. He's got some size on him. I don't know how good he is, but 6'3", 220, that checks off a bunch of boxes there. So we'll see what he's able to bring to the table. And then Derek Jones, a cornerback from Mississippi, 6'2", 188, another guy with some size on him. We'll see how he competes. See how those last two guys compete as big, long, rangy corners. I thought they did a lot of good stuff early in this draft. The first 5 picks, 2 safeties, 2 receivers, and the tight end Jordan Leggett, outstanding. It's what you did after that that I look at it and I say, okay, we'll find out. But to not get a quarterback, okay, fine, you didn't go to quarterback, you didn't get an offensive lineman. You needed an edge rusher, though. There was too many of those in this draft to not get one. Did you have to double down on safety? Did you really feel the need to do that? Okay. Best player available. I don't have a problem with that. Did you have to double down on receiving? Maybe you did, maybe you didn't. But edge rusher should have been in your plan somewhere in this draft. And maybe this guy, Dylan Donahue, is it. But there were some actual legit names that could have come in and helped you at some point in this draft, and you just decided to pass. So, in any event, thought the Jets had a solid draft. I love what they did in the first 5 picks. I didn't love what they did in the final 4 picks, though. So, I thought it was a good draft, though. I won't call it solid. I'll call it good because I thought they helped their football team. 2 safeties, 2 receivers, tight end. All of those guys are going to contribute most likely year 1, and big time at that. Who's throwing the football to them? That's the question. Let's move on to the Oakland Raiders as we come down the home stretch. And the Raiders got Garyon Conley in the first round. I thought he was a top 15 corner in his draft. Top 15 player, I should say. I thought he was one of the top corners in this draft. And to get him at 24, sometimes it takes luck. And that situation that he had, where I think it really wasn't a situation, benefited the Raiders. And sometimes you need luck to be on your side. And I think the Raiders got lucky there. They got themselves a hell of a football player at 24. Obi Melifonwu, for my money, is just one of the freaks of nature in this draft. 6'4", 224. He got in every line. You know, when the Lord is blessing guys with talents and size and length and athleticism, smarts, he got in every line, and that's rare. You know, normally you get in that line, and then we put you in the back of another line, and generally by the time God gets to you in that line, he's run out of dust for you in that line. Okay, so you get some of the dust in the smart line, so then you get into the athletic line, and you may get a sprinkle there, but then you get into the size line, and he gets to you, he's like, oh man, I'm all out, sorry. And so you're a hell of a player, but you're 5'11". Shit. Even sometimes God will give you the athletic dust, and then he'll give you the size dust, and then you get to the smart dust in that smart line, and then he gets to you, and he's all out. You're like, God, this guy's he's dumb as a bag of rocks. He got in every single line. Love Obi Melifonwu. Don't know what the Raiders are going to do with him. Don't care. Put him somewhere. He's a freak. Eddie Vanderdoes is a guy that I thought they maybe overextended for. Okay? 6'3", 305-pound defensive tackle out of UCLA. Thought they could have went linebacker here. This was the time to go linebacker maybe. I just thought they reached here. You wanted an offensive lineman. Maybe that was an opportunity to get one because you went for David Sharp in the 4th round. I just thought Eddie Vanderdoes would have been there for you in the 4th round. Eddie Vanderdoes might have been there for you in the 5th round. Coming off the injuries and not being as impressive. But maybe he won some people over at the Senior Bowl. So, in any event, uh, that's that pick. David Sharp, offensive tackle out of Florida. I don't know him, but by all accounts, he's huge. He's massive, but he needs some work. So we'll see what happens there. Marquel Lee is a guy that I think is solid. I don't know much about him, but a fifth-round linebacker, and I didn't know much about him. So we'll see what he is and if he can help them. They have nothing at linebacker, though, so I thought that would be more of a primary need for them. And they waited to the fifth round to take their first linebacker. So maybe I don't know something about their roster. Shalom Luen, safety out of Washington State. Don't know much about him. Jalen Ware, offensive tackle out of Alabama State. 6'8", 295, so he's huge in terms of length and size, but 295, not the biggest guy in terms of girth. Don't know much about him. He's a seventh round pick anyway. Elijah Hood, a running back out of North Carolina that a lot of people were high on pre-season. Didn't have the greatest year, and a lot of people thought he was going to go back to school. It doesn't matter. He is who he is as a football player. Bottom line is he's solid. He's not great, which is the Raiders running back room right now. Solid, not great. That's why going out and getting beast mode was a necessity because you don't have anything there. But maybe if you didn't have beast mode, you would have changed your philosophy going into draft, and maybe you would have selected one a lot sooner. So, in any event, seventh round, Trayvon Hester, defensive tackle out of Toledo, rounds out what is somewhat of a meh draft. I like the first two picks and really nothing thereafter. Now, I don't know most of these guys, so it's just one of those in Reggie we trust type of drafts, I guess. Once I watch the tape on these guys, maybe I'll be able to further elaborate on whether I like this draft or not. But right now, just off of name recognition and guys that I've seen, not impressed with this draft at all. So you move on to the next draft, and it's the Philadelphia Eagles, the team that hosted the draft, the city that hosted the draft this year, and they did a great job. I thought it was a well-hosted draft. I just thought that they overdid it with the whole Philadelphia thing, and everybody coming out trying to sing the fight song, and they just took it too far. They did too much. But in any event, Eagles extremely active in this draft. They did a lot of things. They reshaped their roster with this draft. This is one of those drafts that we're going to look back on 3-4 years from now and we'll say, this is the draft that helped the Eagles become fill in the blank. And if that could be a Super Bowl contending team, that could be one of the best teams in the NFC East, one of the best teams in the NFC, fill in the blank. We're going to look back at this draft. I think that's how strong of a draft it is. We're going to look back on this draft and we're going to say, this draft helped the Eagles become fill in the blank. So let's get to it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 players in this really impressive Philadelphia Eagles draft. First round, Derek Barnett. Didn't see this one coming, but they needed pressure. No more Connor Barwin, even though he was on his last legs anyway. No more Barwin. You needed some more help, okay? You needed to be able to get to the quarterback. Barnett's going to help you do that. Simple as that. Sidney Jones. Won't be able to play for the first 6 weeks of the season. Start off on the PUP list. But many people saw him as one of the best corners in this draft. You're getting a guy with top 10 talent in the second round. And he tore his Achilles, I believe. Those are scary. ACLs, those are nothing, okay? Guys come back stronger than ever with ACLs. Achilles are the ones that worry me, so I keep a watchful eye on Sidney Jones, but he's on schedule right now. If he comes back and he's the guy that he was before the injury, that's a hell of a pick. Third round, Rasul Douglas. Long, active, ball-hawking, playmaking corner out of West Virginia, 6'2", 209. Not fast, 4'6" guy. But when he tracks the ball, and that's why he's one of these guys, you're playing off coverage, eyes on quarterback. When he sees the football with that length and his ability to go and get it, this man is a problem in the secondary. I love the pick. I really do. Mac Hollins, 6'4", 221-pound wide receiver out of North Carolina. Size, can go up and get the football, but more importantly, he might be the best special teams player in this draft. And I've been listening to Daniel Jeremiah talk about this man's ability to play special teams all draft process long. DJ loves this guy, and I take DJ's word for it. I watched Mac Hollins go up and make plays at North Carolina, so I know he can add a little bit of value as a receiver too. With 6'4", 221, you can't teach the size that he has. This guy can play special teams though, so like that pick as well. Donnell Pumphrey, the most decorated running back from a production standpoint in NCAA history, overtaking Ron Dane for the most yards in NCAA history, is Donnell Pumphrey. At 5'8", 176, not going to knock your socks off size-wise, but he's the new Darren Sproles. Darren Sproles will probably be in Philadelphia for one more year, and then Donnell Pumphrey is going to slide right into his spot, and you won't miss a beat. And so that's why I love this pick, because he gets to learn from the absolute best. Nobody does it better than Darren Sproles at his size, special teams, catching it out of the backfield, running it out of the backfield. Nobody does it better than Darren Sproles. And Mighty Mike is going to show this young fella the ropes, and he's going to step in, and he's going to be a dynamic playmaker for the Philadelphia Eagles. Shelton Gibson, wide receiver out of West Virginia, speedster, can catch the football. This is a guy that just flat out can stretch the field. If nothing else, I don't look at Sheldon Gibson as much of anything else other than play action fake, oh shit, there goes Sheldon Gibson again behind the defense by 3 yards, touchdown. That's what he brings to the table. If he makes this team, he's going to be a problem because he's going to get behind defenses. If you can run the football effectively, Sheldon Gibson will be a weapon for you day one as a play action fake threat. He doesn't even need play action fake, honestly, to get behind a defender. But if you can run the football, sneak this guy in the game, they don't know who the hell he is. It's not going to be long before people know who Sheldon Gibson is, just because of how dynamic he is from a speed standpoint. But we'll see what happens with him if he makes this roster. Nate Gary, safety out of Nebraska, 6'2", 218. He's a guy that I really like. He's a very smart, heady football player. He's not the greatest athlete, but he's just one of those guys that has a knack for being around the football. I mean, I watched a ton of him at Nebraska, and every time I watched him, I'd see a guy that was just smart and knew where to be. And he lacks athleticism, but he makes up with it with his ability to just know where to be. Doesn't waste a lot of steps. He's going to play special teams, but I think it's going to give him an opportunity to find his way onto the football field. The Eagles are thin back there anyway, so I think he's going to not only make this roster as a special teams guy, but he's going to find his way onto the field. The coaches, I'm telling you right now, the coaches are going to love him because he's just going to be a smart, heady football player. And then finally, Elijah Qualls, a defensive tackle out of Washington. This is a guy that's just big. He's physical. He's a big-time wall in the run game. I think he's not only going to make this team as a 6th-round pick, but I think he's going to be a guy that they're going to put in early down situations. He's going to stop the run. So top to bottom, I think this is an outstanding draft for the Philadelphia Eagles. I really do. So I thought they killed it. I thought the Giants had a strong draft. I thought the Cowboys had a strong draft. I thought the Eagles had a strong draft. NFC East looking really good right now with their drafts. As the Eagles, I thought, put forth a draft, like I said, a draft that 3-4 years from now, I wouldn't be shocked if we're saying the Eagles, the core of their football team, a lot of guys that are contributing came from this draft in 2017, and it helped them become fill in the blank. Pittsburgh Steelers. See what they were able to accomplish. TJ Watt, first round, pass rusher, needed to have one. Don't have a problem with the pick. Juju Smith-Schuster, I did have a problem with this pick because I thought they could have gotten a corner there. I thought they could have attacked the inside linebacker position there. I thought there were opportunities to do a number of things there, and they did. They took a receiver. Now, I did hear about Martavis Bryant tweeting out that the Steelers just drafted Sammy Coates' replacement. So there was a little drama there. And yes, he's going to take Sammy Coates' place, I think. But that was Bryant's way of saying he's not ahead of me, But nonetheless, uh, Mike Tomlin had to go and say, hey, guys, play nice, cut it out. Bottom line is Juju Smith-Schuster is a good receiver. I think he's going to come in and he's going to help. And I actually think he's better in the slot than he is out wide. So we're going to see what he brings to the table. All right. Cameron Sutton, cornerback out of Tennessee. I look at him as a slot guy. And I thought you could use a guy that could play out wide. So he's going to come in, he's going to help. But I thought you needed somebody out wide. James Conner, the running back out of Pitt. I love this pick because he's a polar opposite of what you get out of Le'Veon Bell. And Le'Veon Bell is a stud, and he's on the field all the time. But I think he would be better served by getting a blow every now and again and allowing someone else to come in and help take a little bit of the load off of his shoulders. And I think enter James Conner to do that. And so I like that pick. Here's the big bombshell of the Steelers draft. 4th round, Joshua Dobbs, quarterback out of Tennessee. Steelers fans were telling me this over and over and over again. We're taking Josh Dobbs. We're taking Josh Dobbs. I didn't believe them. They took Josh Dobbs. So that one was a big one for me. That's a big get. They need a quarterback. They need someone to be the successor for when Ben finally hangs it up. Ben's going to get injured. That's a fact. He gets injured every year. He's going to miss at least 2 games. So Joshua Dobbs may see the field in 2017. We'll see. Defensive back Brian Allen out of Utah. Don't know him, but he's got some size, 6'3", 215. So that's intriguing in itself. Colin Hulba, long snapper out of Louisville. He's a long snapper, folks. And 7th round, Keon Adams, outside linebacker out of Western Michigan. He's a rush outside linebacker, which the Steelers could use. So we'll see if he's able to make their roster. 6'2", 245, got some good size on him. We'll see if he's able to stick on this roster. I thought it was a solid draft. I'm not wowed by what they did, but one thing about the Steelers, they draft players that fit who they are, the identity of the Steelers. And I think that's what they did here in this draft. So it was a solid draft, but I still question the Juju Smith-Schuster selection. 49ers. Here's a team that was extremely busy in free agency and equally as busy in the draft. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 selections. Just like last year, I think they had 10 or 11 selections. The difference between this year and last year's draft is this one isn't garbage. Last year's draft was straight trash. Okay, ball that shit up, throw it in the garbage, tie it up, take it outside. That shit was trash last year. This year's draft, outstanding. John Lynch comes in and right away has an impact. Solomon Thomas, you trade back, pick up picks, and get Solomon Thomas 3rd overall. Love it. Love it. Love it. Follow that up by trading back into the 1st round and getting Reuben Foster. Love it. Okay, a guy that was a top 10 pick, has some injury concerns, off the field concerns. To hell with all of that. He's a football player. Take him, figure out the rest of that stuff later. Love it. One of my favorite corners in this draft, 3rd round, Ahkello Witherspoon. Love it. Great value. This is a guy that I think is one of the best pure man-to-man press cover corners in the entire draft. Love this guy. Love that you got him in the 3rd round. C.J. Beathard. Perfect backup to Kirk Cousins when you get him next year. Perfect backup. Exactly what you draw up as a backup. So you come in, he learns Kyle Shanahan's offense 1 year early so that when Kirk Cousins comes over, who will already pretty much have intimate knowledge of Kyle Shanahan's offense, you're set, you're ready to go. Joe Williams. Love Joe Williams. I wanted my Redskins to take him. Has some fumbling issues. A lot of people want to talk about the retirement thing. He already cleared that up. He said, look, my sister died in her sleep when I was like 10 years old. I felt guilty. I felt like I could do more. I didn't. I was carrying around those demons and that weight on my shoulders. I felt responsible for her death. I couldn't play football with a heavy heart anymore. I needed to get help. I needed to understand that it wasn't my fault. Once I did, I came back and I'm ready now. I'm good. That's good enough for me. Love Joe Williams. You block it, he goes. Much like I said with Marlon Mack, he gets his crease. See you later. Love Joe Williams. One of the fastest backs in this draft. George Kittle. I did a draft prospects one-on-one breakdown on him for a reason. He's athletic. He can catch. And oh, by the way, he can block. Is he a fullback? Is he a tight end? I don't care. I don't give a shit. Put him somewhere on the field and let him help you. That's what the 49ers are going to do. Love that pick. Trent Taylor, wide receiver out of Louisiana Tech, don't know him. DJ Jones, defensive tackle out of Mississippi, don't know him, but I've heard about him. Heard he's physical, aggressive in the run game, so I have to do some homework on him. Peter T. out of Utah, don't know him. Outside linebacker. Finally, Adrian Colbert, defensive back out of Miami. Size, height, weight, speed specimen, 6'2", 205, ran a sub 4'4", excuse me. So here we're talking 4'3", 6'2", 205. He's a freak, but all that means is he could be another coming of Taylor Mays. So don't know what that means, but he's an athlete, and you can always try and work with athletes. So I love this draft. Love Solomon Thomas, Reuben Foster, Kilo Witherspoon. Love the C.J. Beathard pick. I didn't like where you took him in the third round. I didn't think you had to take C.J. Beathard in the third round, but obviously you identified him as your guy. Fine. Joe Williams, George Kittle. So I love your first 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. First 5 out of 6 picks, I love them, and I like the C.J. Beathard pick. Out of 10 picks, I love 5 out of them. And I think a 6th is worth mentioning in C.J. Beathard. I thought the 49ers killed it. Absolutely stellar draft. You didn't address offensive line. A lot of teams didn't address offensive line in this draft. I don't blame you. Love the 49ers draft. Thought they killed it. As we move on to the Seattle Seahawks. This was another busy team that just said, you know what? Quantity over quality. We don't know what the hell we're getting, but we're just going to throw the darts at the board as many times as possible and see how many of them stick. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 selections for the Seattle Seahawks. Malik McDowell, a defensive tackle that they take in the second round. It's good value for a guy that can come in, and if they coach him up, could be a menace on that defense. Ethan Posick, center out of LSU. I think he's going to end up playing guard. He can also play tackle. The versatility there is alarming. So I really like that pick for an offensive line that just needs help in general. Shaquille Griffin, don't know much about him, but 6 foot, 195 corner essentially. I don't know what that says about the future of Dick Sherman in Seattle, but one thing's for sure, they like Shaquille Griffin. Delano Hill, safety out of Michigan, 6'1", 216 pounds. Don't know much about him, but he's got some size, and I know he can run a little bit. So we'll see what that does for them. Nazir Jones, 6'5", 304 pound, defensive tackle out of North Carolina. He's spotty. He's one of these guys. I think the entire defensive line position was inconsistent for me. So he's another one of those guys you throw into that mix. But when he's on, he's a problem. When he's not, he's invisible. So I've said that about at least 3 or 4 guys throughout the process today. Amara Darboh, wide receiver out of Michigan. Another height, weight, speed guy out of Michigan. Struggles against press coverage. He's from Michigan. You know how I feel about Michigan wide receivers. That being said, he's another, to me, just like with the Chiefs and the other Michigan receiver that they took, it's exactly the prototypical Seahawks receiver. Not going to wow you with any one trait. He's going to be a solid guy, a meh guy that everyone's going to overlook. like the rest of the receivers on your roster. He's not going to get enough credit, but he's going to be really solid for your football team. That's Amara Dalton. So I think he fits right in with the rest of the Seahawks receivers that they have. Tedrick Thompson, free safety out of Colorado. I really like Tedrick Thompson. I told you I was in love with the Colorado secondary in general. He's got some concussion issues. That scared some teams. But he can run. He's not as fast as, and again, 4.6 isn't slow. It just isn't as fast as everybody else in this draft. Okay, this draft was stupid athletic at safety and corner. He's not that. But what he is extremely heady and smart, doesn't waste motion. He's always where he's supposed to be, when he's supposed to be there. He does what he's supposed to do. He can tackle. He will miss a tackle or two, but look, I love Tedrick Thompson. I love Akilo Witherspoon. I love Chidobe Awuzie. I love the Colorado secondary. And so Tedrick Thompson is a guy that I like. And at 6 feet, 204, I think he's got a shot to not only make this roster, but be an impact player for them very soon. Safety Michael Tyson out of Cincinnati. I don't know much about him. 6'1", 204. We'll see what they do with him. 6th round, Justin Senior, tackle out of Mississippi State. 6'5", 333. He's big. He's a massive guy. They needed offensive line help, and they waited until the 6th round to actually address offensive line other than Ethan Posick. So I thought they would have tried to make a concerted effort to get one of these tackles in this draft. They just said, to hell with it. And I'm not even mad at them because this wasn't a great offensive line draft. Wide receiver David Moore, 6'2", 225 out of East Central Oklahoma. I don't know much about him. And Christopher Carson, running back out of Oklahoma State. Don't know much about him either, so I'll have some work to do. When you got an 11-player draft, obviously there are going to be a ton of guys I don't know anything about, but this is a typical Seahawks draft. Snag up as many picks, trade back a ton of times, snag up as many picks, throw the darts at the dartboard as many times as we can, and hope 5 or 6 of these guys stick. And that's essentially what they did in this draft. I wasn't overwhelmed by what they did. Like I said, quantity over quality. And that's generally what you get out of the Seahawks each and every single draft. And it's worked for them. So I don't have a problem with what Carroll and company do every year. They do the same thing, and it works for them. So another one of those drafts. Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I thought they had an outstanding first couple of days as well. And then because of some of the moves they made early in the draft, they didn't have as many picks in day 3, but they didn't really need it. They had an impact in free agency. You add a few impact players in the draft, and voila, you can transform your team. This was a fringe playoff team. I think with the moves that they made in the draft and in free agency, this could be a team that goes from knocking on the door of making the postseason to busting that door down. O.J. Howard, great value here. I thought he was underrated as a pass catcher because they didn't use him enough in that realm at Alabama. I thought they should have thrown him the football a ton more. They just didn't. Uber athletic, best blocking tight end, one of the best blocking tight ends in this draft. So you get the best combination of pass catching, route running, and blocking in one body in O.J. Howard. Love that pick. Justin Evans, safety out of Texas A&M. I really like this pick a lot too. I think he gives you that single high free safety look. Will come up and hit you. Will miss tackles. Stated that yesterday, but does a little bit of everything. So I like that pick. Chris Godwin, a guy that my man Reed was just like, yo, I love Chris Godwin. Think he does everything. Doesn't have any flaws. And it's amazing that he was talking so glowingly about him, and his team drafts him. 6'1", 210-pound receiver out of Penn State. Look, he went to Penn State. And so I told you I'm always leery of Big Ten wide receivers, period. You know, Allen Robinson is not the norm. He is the exception to the rule. He is not the rule. So generally, I don't think you get a lot of studs out of the Big Ten. You did get a couple of receivers out of Ohio State last year. Michael Thomas was pretty good. So we'll see if Chris Godwin comes in and plays well. Runs well, catches it well. I think he's really solid. Um, I think he's a guy that's going to continue to help Jameis Winston. They didn't have enough out there. We talked about that last year. There's not enough around Jameis Winston. You give him O.J. Howard, you give him Chris Godwin, you give him Deshaun Jackson. All of a sudden now, along with Mike Evans, they got a ton of stuff out there now. So they also traded back into the third round and selected Kendall Beckwith. The ACL tear is the reason why he was still there in the third round, but this guy's a football player. And like I said before, ACLs, they fix those up like nothing. I expect him to come back and be a stud for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, so I love this selection as well. And then you go to the fifth round, Jeremy McNichols, running back out of Boise State. To me, a Doug Martin clone. And where did Doug Martin go? Oh, yeah, he went to Boise State. Same back, same build, same type of guy, the exact same running back. So that tells me they're done with Doug. And Jeremy McNichols is going to take his spot. That's how I look at that. And then finally, Stevie T, as they call him at USC, nose tackle. Look, Stevie T isn't running anybody down, but you are not running around Stevie T, period. This dude is a brick wall in the middle of a defense, 6'1", 331 pounds. I wouldn't advise you running near Stevie T, man. This dude is a rock in the middle of a defense. So love that selection in the seventh round to get a guy that, look, you know what you're getting out of him. You don't have to guess. If he makes your roster, he's going to stop the run. Don't ask him to do anything else. But just a solid draft by the Bucs. Like I said, the NFC South to me has had an outstanding draft as a whole division, and the Buccaneers did not disappoint. Not a lot of picks here. Only 6 picks total. But what they did with those 6 picks was phenomenal. The first 4 picks, I'm in love with them, including the Kendall Beckwith pick, where they're going to get a guy that's not going to even be able to play right away, but doesn't matter. He's going to help you when he gets healthy. So really good draft by the Buccaneers as we move on to the Tennessee Titans. Extremely active draft. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 selections. I think they caught a lot of people off guard with the Corey Davis pick. Some of you thought they might have gone receiver that early. I didn't. I thought it would go corner there. But they said, don't worry, we got 2 first-round picks. So they go Corey Davis, who I perceive to be the best receiver in this draft. They get the best receiver in this draft. And then they turn around and they get Dory Jackson with their second first-round pick. So they attacked both of the biggest needs that I think a lot of people perceive them to have at receiver and corner. Boom, boom, in the first round. Now you're playing with house money. They go back, and I thought they did a really good job of just surrounding Marcus Mariota with targets. Taywan Taylor out of Western Kentucky is a guy that I really like. He's tough, has some speed, catches the football well. I think that's a really solid acquisition there. Jonnu Smith, tight end out of Florida International. I've heard about him. I don't know about him, but I know he's athletically gifted. And so I think he's a guy that can help them. I've even heard that he may even be more of an H-back type of guy, but whatever the case may be, 6'3", 248, can run, can catch. I think he's a solid football player. Jayon Brown is a guy that I saw at UCLA a ton, just watching tape of all the UCLA defenders, whether you're talking about Fabian Moreau or you're talking about Takars McKinley. Jayon Brown just kept making plays. He was always around the football. He's your prototypical weak side linebacker, guy that can run, make some plays on the football. I see this guy just being out in space and trying to make some plays for this team. He's undersized, but like I said, in this day and age with the nickel linebacker being essentially a small safety or big safety or small linebacker, I think that's what he's going to be at the next level. So that's a solid pick there. Corey Levin, offensive lineman out of Tennessee, Chattanooga, right in their backyard. Gives them a little bit of depth. We'll see if he makes the roster. Josh Caraway, outside linebacker out of TCU. I think he's a guy that can get to the quarterback. You know, I've watched him over the last couple of years just because I watched quite a bit of TCU, whether scouting players or just them being on Fox. I've seen a ton of TCU, and he's one of those guys that can get to the quarterback. Brad Seaton, a tackle out of Villanova, don't know anything about him. And Kafani Muhammad, running back out of California. I don't know much about him either, but he's 5'9", 175, so he's probably got some quicks and a little bit of speed to him if I had to guess. All right, so I thought it was a really good draft by the Titans. Loved what they did early by just going ahead and eliminating all suspense and killing the receiver and cornerback needs right away. Tywan Taylor is a guy that I think is going to give them some more depth at receiver, come in and help right away. Along Jonnu Smith is a guy that I think could help them at the tight end H-back, type of position. Jayon Brown is a guy that I think is going to come in and serve a purpose. It's some sub packages for them. And then the rest of these guys are developmental guys. And, I even kind of like Josh Caraway a little bit as a sub package guy, as a pass rusher that could potentially get on the field for them as a 7th-round pick if he can make the roster. So we will see what the Titans decide to do with some of those 7th-round guys who are intriguing, including Muhammad, who might be another option as a punt returner potentially as well if you don't want to put Adoree Jackson back there. So I thought it was a really solid draft for the Titans. Very top heavy, but when you got 2 first-round picks, it's supposed to be top heavy. And then finally, last but not least, saving the best for last, my boys, the Washington Redskins, I thought had an outstanding draft, especially the first 5 picks, first 5 rounds. I was just blown away at how much good value they got throughout the first 5 rounds, and they even got some developmental guys at the end that are intriguing. So this was a fun draft. Redskins came into the day with 10 picks, into the draft with 10 picks. They ended up with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 selections. So they came in with 10 and they drafted 10 players. So Jonathan Allen, we spoke volumes and at great length about just how fortunate the Redskins were to get away with a player of his ilk at that level, at that point of the draft. Ryan Anderson was a guy that I wasn't that enthused about. I'll do some more homework on him, but I thought there were other options there that were better that we could have taken that I wanted. But by all accounts, this guy's a stud. So I'm going to reserve judgment until I actually go and do extensive film study. I'm just telling you what I saw from afar, that he's a player that we already have on our roster. Ryan Kerrigan, Preston Smith, Trent Murphy. He's one of those types of guys. But we'll see. In any event, Fabio Moreau, a guy that is dealing with a pec injury, so he's not going to be able to help us right away. But I love Fabio Moreau. I fell in love with him at the combine, and I went and put tape on because of how impressive he was. And there's a few glitches in his game, but tell you what, man, speed isn't one of them. Size isn't one of them. He can track the football. He can locate. I like what I see, man. There's a lot of workable tools there. We might have a legit starting corner in Fabio Moreau when he gets back and gets healthy. Samaje Perine, a guy that I was in love with 2 years ago as a running back in Oklahoma. Not so much. I've cooled off on him. Not to say that he's not a really good back. I'm pleased with the addition of Samaje Perine. Very underrated back in this draft because I think a lot of the attention went to Joe Mixon, and rightfully so. Mixon was the more talented of the two. But remember, Perine, at one point when Mixon was suspended, set the NCAA record for most rush yards in a game. I watched that game at least 4 times versus Kansas. That was so much fun. He was just bouncing off a guy. But that's the Big 12. I told you how I feel about the Big 12. Bottom line is, he's a physical guy. The joke I always like to tell with him is when he came to Oklahoma for his visit, because he's a grown man. He's 5'11", 233. He was 5'11", 233 when he showed up on campus. All right, he's been 5'11", 233. And he showed up on campus for a visit. And one of the coaches asked him, hey, whose father are you? He's talking to like an 18-year-old kid, and he's asking him whose dad is he? Because he's got all this facial hair, receding hairline, and oh, by the way, he's 5'11", 230 pounds. Just a grown man at 18 years old. So he's one of those running backs that I really liked a couple of years ago, and I think he's a really good football player. Monte Nicholson is a height, weight, speed specimen out of Michigan State that I fell in love with at the combine. I got to watch tape on him, but just off of the measurables and how I saw him move, I was impressed, man. 6'2", 212, sub 4.5 40. He was extremely fast. He's coming off of a shoulder surgery. So the Redskins loading up on guys coming off of surgeries, but nonetheless, I think this guy could be a difference maker at the safety position. And even though they went out and got DJ Stranger, even though they're moving Sua Cravens to safety, you can never have enough defensive backs. Love the selection of Monte Nicholson. They followed that up with an even more impressive selection in the 5th round of tight end Jeremy Sprinkle. Sprinkle me, bitch. Sprinkle me. That's going to be my thing. I loved Sprinkle last year. I actually thought that if he was in the draft last year, he would have been one of the best tight ends in the draft. And I watched a ton of tape of him watching Hunter Henry last year, and I was like, he's just as good, if not better than damn Hunter Henry. And Hunter Henry went in either the 1st or early 2nd last year to the Chargers. I think it was the early 2nd round. He went to the Chargers. First tight end off the board. And Sprinkle was just as good as him last year. He wasn't, I thought he was going to have a breakout year this year. He didn't, but some of that has to be attributed to the change at quarterback. Remember, Brandon Allen was there 2 years ago. He got drafted by Jacksonville last year. His brother was a freshman, played there this past year, and so there was a little bit of a drop-off at the quarterback position. But nonetheless, Jeremy Sprinkle can catch. He's an athlete, and oh, by the way, he's one of the best blocking tight ends in this draft. So I love this selection. I think he can come in and help right away. With Jordan Reed getting injured a ton, almost every year you can count on him missing a few games. And Vernon Davis being a little bit older, even though we just gave him a 3-year deal. And Niles Paul just not being able to stay healthy for the life of me. Jeremy Sprinkle pick is awesome. Chase Roulier, center out of Wyoming. Don't know much about him. I'll have to do some film study there. Robert Davis, wide receiver out of Georgia State. I'm intrigued just off of his size alone, 6'3", 219. I'm hearing a lot of people say some really good things about him. Height, weight, speed, developmental guy. Can't wait to watch tape on him. This Josh Harvey Clemens guy, 6'4", 217. Now, he sounds like a headache off the field. Was suspended and ultimately transferred after he was kicked out of Georgia's program. But I tell you what, man, 6'4", 217, that gets me excited. And I heard he can hit. I heard he can run. And you don't get recruited to Georgia unless you can play football. So there may be something to this guy. That's why I told you. There's some developmental guys at the back end of this draft that gets me excited. A couple of big, tall, long, physical, height, weight, speed specimens, man. Love those guys. And then Joshua Holsey, defensive back out of Auburn. Don't know much about him. They say he's a 4-year starter with some experience at corner and safety. I don't know what the hell that actually means. I've never even heard this guy's name before. So I'll have to do some homework on him too. But just this draft just gets me excited just from the standpoint of the first 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 picks out of 10. Great picks, all of them. And then you tell me at the back end of the draft, this Robert Davis and Josh Harvey Clemens guy are height, weight, speed specimens that have potential to not only make the roster, but be impact guys. I'm excited. Celebrate. And also, while you're at it, thank Scott McCloughan for doing all of this and leaving us one final parting gift on his way out, because they used his draft board to make these selections. There's no doubt in my mind that all of the tools and things that he was able to afford them going into this process, they went ahead and used it, and they did a hell of a job. So that's the 2017 NFL Draft in a nutshell. I'm worn out. 3 days over, let's call it 10 hours. No, let's not call it. It was over 10 hours. I did 5 yesterday alone. 3 more today. You know, the first round, 8 to about 11. So that was over 10 hours of coverage of the draft. But look, man, that's what your man Louie T does. wall-to-wall coverage of the 2017 NFL Draft, just like I give you wall-to-wall coverage of the National Football League. So just to recap, off first blush, the best drafts that I saw, New Orleans Saints, Cincinnati Bengals, and I'm missing a team. Indianapolis Colts were the ones that stood out to me. Love some other drafts as well. I told you the NFC South, to me, as a total division, killed it. Redskins, I think the NFC East had a strong draft as well. Redskins, Cowboys, Giants, Eagles all did some work as well. There were some other drafts that were very top-heavy that did some good things, like the Vikings had a top-heavy draft, but Titans had a top-heavy draft. There were some teams that did some good things. I thought the Jets had a top-heavy draft and then fell off towards the end, but nonetheless, that's the 2017 NFL Draft, folks. Draft wrap-up series to begin shortly. Give me some time. Give me some time. I got to recoup from this long weekend, but it was fun. Had a blast. For those of you out there who are new to the channel, welcome. Subscribe to the Louie T Network. And this is what you can expect from me. If you haven't seen me before, nor my channel, this is what I do, man. This is what we do. We cover the whole entire NFL like a blanket. If it happens in the National Football League, whether big or small, we cover it all here on the Louie T Network. Come back and join me as I continue to break down anything and everything in the National Football League. Remember, we're changing the game one live feed at a time. Be sure to follow me on Twitter at In the Lab Room. Be sure to follow me on Instagram. It's me, Louie T. On IG is the Instagram handle. It's me, Louie T. I don't want to confuse you. That's my handle on IG. Make sure you subscribe to the Louie T Network on YouTube, and also make sure that you like the Facebook page. In the Lab Room is the Facebook page. That's going to do it for me. What a weekend. What a draft. A lot of fun. Hope you enjoyed your team's draft and the entire experience. For those of you who joined me all 3 days, or 1 out of the 3 days, or 2 of the 3 days, thank you. And I hope you enjoyed the entire draft experience with me breaking this stuff down. So that's it. I'm done. I'll return sometime in the near future with the draft wrap-up series, and we'll get the ball rolling, and we'll just run through this draft as quickly as humanly possible. Till then, have a good one. Enjoy the rest of your weekend.